Tonight, I've got a 75-page book and 52 arcs to talk about, so let's skip the pleasantries and get into the episode. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 178 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep it real damn brief this time because we have a hell of a long episode ahead. This week originally had 19 comics and I shortened that down to 16. Last episode I covered 3 different comics that should have belonged in this week. Be sure to check those out if you didn't. They were Deathstroke, Harley Quinn, and Secret Origins pinned onto the end of last week's episode. As for this week's episode, I'm not going to tell you all the books that came out. I literally do not have the time to do so. Because the very first thing I'm covering is the Multiversity Guidebook, and it takes like 15 minutes for me to get through a single issue. It's 75 pages, and I go in depth. So let's just get on with the show, and if I have anything I need to tell you, I'll tell you next week. The Multiversity Guidebook number 1, written by Grant Morrison, art by, I swear to God, everyone. So, where to even begin? This book opens up with the messed up, creepy Hannibal Lecter Savannah from the Thunderworld issue is burning and killing the entirety of the Justice League Chibi, which are from Earth 42, along with his own Chibi Savannah. And Chibi Savannah's like, oh, I've never seen anyone die before. It's never happened in my universe. So Chibi Batman comes in with a little fire extinguisher. He puts out Martian Manhunter. Green Arrow and Hawkman are there to help him out. And Batman's like, no, you guys got to get out of here, help save the world, I'll hold them off. So Weird Savannah sends in a robot army that he's got under his control, whereas the two Savannahs then start trying to mess with the trans matter world mover thing. So they activate it, they go through, and as the other Chibis go out of the room, Batman is saved by some mystery person, and it turns out to be the Batman from Earth, I don't know, one of the other ones, where it is a Atomic Knight is the name of their team, the Atomic Knights, and it turns out that this guy is looking for the Cosmic Grail, but he comes across Chibi Batman, he's like, what the heck, who are you? And the whole thing is that he's like retro-futuristic, by the way. So he's saying how he dreamed of a rose that grows in winter. He entered the Vault of Ages, and he thought he did some stuff, but then ultimately he's like, but now I'm here. You must have done this. You must be working for Darkseid. And Chibi Batman's like, what the hell's a Darkseid? I'm Dick Grayson. I'm you, Bruce. And the Atomic Knight one is like, Bruce, that's not a name that anyone's called me. Wait a minute, Dick Grayson. He's dead. So we go to the Savannahs, who's talking to the Legion of Savannahs from last issue, and the Chibi one comes in and he's like, where are we? And they're just like, oh, you know, we're in this big thing we made. It's in the multiverse, and it's doing all this stuff. But basically, they're saying we're going to take over the multiverse, and Chibi Savannah's like, I don't know about that, guys. That seems really evil. And they're just like, oh, we know you're not into this. We know that you're not going to be up for this. We're just going to eat you. So it seems that they just straight up kill this Chibi version of him. So then we go and we see that the Marvel family, Captain Marvel and co., have followed this Legion of Savannahs to this place in the multiverse in order to stop them. So the Legion of Savannahs is like, all right, whatever. We can travel anywhere we want in the multiverse. Let's go in. And they play a certain note, and a bunch of the Legion go through the transmatter thing, but the really creepy one stays behind because he wants a closer look at little Mary Marvel. So Chibi Batman's like, all right, we were tricked into a raid on Savannah's lair. It turned out it was a whole big thing. And like, they killed my team. We've never had a death in this universe before. It's never happened. It's crazy. So he says that Savannah said something about a comic book. And so he starts reading the comic book, which is the Multiversity Guidebook, looking for hints. And Atomic Knight Batman's just like, hey man, can we pick up the pace? I got places to be. I got a team waiting for me. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So Batman opens up the book and turns it to a page, which is the same page that now I'm on, which is Kamandi on Earth 51, which is like a Jack Kirby universe, and he's sailing in a raft to this long abandoned island that is straight up like got a whole bunch of things from different time periods on it. And as they arrive, they're talking about like, oh, we have to find Flower. She was kidnapped. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And they find this vault, the secret tomb that has been broken up. And they figure wherever Flower is, she must have been taken inside of that. And we see the new gods are watching them saying, all right, everything we feared has come to pass. It's Darkseid has taken advantage of our slumber. He was asleep. That was his tomb. He's broken out of it somehow. But who's managed to get Darkseid out of his tomb? Like, what's going on with that? We go back into the scene itself, and we see that one of the guys with Kamandi is Biomac, who's an OMAC, I guess. He turns into his OMAC form, goes into the tomb, starts clearing it out, and there's all these writings on the walls. And they say, oh, this is from old times, before the Great Disaster. Can you read it, Kamandi? And Kamandi's like, yes, I think so. He says, once, nothing and everything were the same thing. And now we just get the full origin story of everything in the DC Universe. So there was an endless perfect void, except for a tiny little flaw. And one day, the void noticed the flaw, and the void called itself the Monitor Mind, the Overvoid. And he was like, all right, so what the hell's this flaw? So he sent down a tiny ambassador of itself named Dax Novu, the Science Monitor, to go inside the flaw. And it turns out that inside what was a singular universe became a multiverse because Dax Novu split into two, and each of them is a different world within themselves. And then we cut back and we show that they're paging through comic books inside of Darkseid's tomb, and it says everything began with a Flash. Barry Allen, the Flash, he got his name from a comic book superhero from the Golden Age, and he was obsessed with parallel worlds. One day he vibrated the right frequency, went to that comic book version's world, which ended up being an Earth 2 or whatever, and then they started doing adventures all the time on multiple Earths, and there were tons of Flashes, and they were all running together. It's a whole multiverse, and everyone was exploring it all the time. And then Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, and the entirety of the multiverse became just one single universe again. But it was very unstable. So then we had Crisis in Time, blanking on the name of it, that's going to bug me, with Hal Jordan Parallax. Then we had Infinite Crisis with Superboy, and when Infinite Crisis happened, it shattered the universe and made the multiverse again, but instead of infinite, it was only 52 worlds, and we had a whole thing where they rediscovered that. The Monitors came back, they were back in charge, everyone had one Earth that they were paying attention to, and then all the Monitors died. I assume this is Final Crisis, and all that was left was Nixuotan, the sole remaining Monitor to watch over the whole multiverse. Flashpoint happened, they just kind of glossed by that, and then they see that there is a great hand that remakes the world. And so they finish up all that and they say, hey, this comic book is different. And he's holding up a copy of Ultra Comics, and he's like, they summoned something evil here, we gotta bail. Cut back to the Chibi universe, Chibi Batman's like, hey, there's a map of all the multiverse, this could save us. And we get the goddamn map of the multiverse that I'm sure that anyone who has any pressing interest in DC has already seen. I won't get that much into it, but the Atomic Knight Batman's just like, what do I care about this? I'm just trying to get back to my own place. Like, there's a whole thing going on. And Chibi Batman's like, look, these cubes are travel devices. These stories, each one is like part of a chain. It's everyone's passing through comic books, through the universes. And Chibi Batman says that in his universe, the last issue of Batman Little Gotham was trying to warn them about a cosmic invader. And they thought it was a comic book story, but instead it was a warning. So Atomic Knight Batman seals up the door, makes sure no one can get in. The whole system is out of power. He doesn't know how to start it back up. So the Atomic Knight hooks in, gives him his nuclear battery, and Chibi Batman's like, okay, now it has something to do with like wavelengths and vibrations. We have to whistle up a world. And so he tries to figure out what world he's supposed to do. And there happens to be a list of all 52 Earths now. And I'm just going to go through them all super quick here. So, Earth 0, main DC universe. Earth 1, it's where everyone's a little bit younger and they're just starting out. Earth 2, JSA, everyone's also younger. Earth 3, Crime Syndicate, everyone just cares about strength. Earth 4, it's Watchmen, but not actually Watchmen, but involving all the Charlton Comics characters. Earth 5, it's Thunderworld, you get Captain Marvel and the whole Marvel family. Earth 6, that's Stan Lee's Just Imagine line, where he thought about the DC heroes in a new origin story. Earth 7, Marvel Ultimate Universe, currently dead. Earth 8, Marvel Main Universe, still alive. Earth 9, that is Tangent Comics, DC line. Earth 10, Nazi Universe. Earth 11, Gender Swapped Universe. Earth 12, that's the DC Animated Universe. Earth 13, it's a creepy supernatural universe with a bunch of Vertigo characters in it. Earth 14 is currently undiscovered as of the publishing of this, but now it's become the Justice League of Assassins. Think like Gears of War, but Justice League. Earth 15, it was a perfect universe that Superboy Prime destroyed, and the only thing left is a thing called the Cosmic Grail. Earth 16, next generation of heroes, they're all teenagers and self-absorbed. Earth 17, that's the Atomic Knights one. That's the one that our Batman came from. It's all retro-futuristic sort of stuff. Earth 18, Wild West Universe. Earth 19, Steampunk. Earth 20, we had that in the beginning of the series of Multiversity. It is one of the binary worlds. This is the good half, the pulp universes. Earth 21, Darwin Cook's New Frontier. Earth 22, Kingdom Come. Earth 23, I think it's like mostly a race-swapped universe, but it's the home of Calvin Ellis, aka President Superman. Earth 24 is not available at the time, but it ends up being the Bombshells universe. Earth 25, also not available, but it ends up being the Tom Strong / ABC universe. Earth 26 is a cartoon universe, home of the Zoo Crew. Earth 27, not available, everyone's a dinosaur. Earth 28, not available, everyone pilots a mech. Earth 29, Bizarro Universe. Earth 30, Soviet Russia. Earth 31, Pirate Universe. Earth 32, it's like a mashup universe. We got like a Batman / Green Lantern character, a Superman / Martian Manhunter one. Earth 33, our real life world where we live here. Earth 34, that is a stand-in for Astro City, a comic book. Earth 35, that's a stand-in for Rob Liefeld's Awesome Comics. Earth 36 is a stand-in for Big Bang Comics, which is kind of just like Golden Age stuff. Earth 37 is the works of Howard Chaykin, who wrote books such as Thrill Killers and Twilight. Earth 38 is if Superman and Batman were actually born in 1930s and they continued to age normally. Earth 39 is an analog for the Thunder Agents, another line of books. Earth 40 is the other half of that binary world, the bad half of the pulp heroes. Earth 41 is a stand-in for Image Comics. Earth 42 is the Chibi universe, as we explained before. Earth 43, everyone's a vampire. Earth 44, everyone is robots, and they're all made by a Red Tornado stand-in who's not a robot. Earth 45 is a hyper-capitalist fascist regime that is led by a being called Super Doom. Earth 46 is not currently available, but is the future home of the Gargoyle of Gotham, which at the time of publishing this video, 10 years later, is still not done. Earth 47 is the Dream World Groovy. It's got like a whole bunch of flower power stuff going on with it. Earth 48, I'm calling the Extreme Universe. It's just made up of like a bunch of extreme characters, and everything's an event all the time. Earth 49, not currently known, but it ends up being the Injustice universe. Earth 50, in the DC animated universe, there was a parallel world that was the Justice Lords. That's that one. And then Earth 51 is the Kamandi, aka Kirby verse, where everything is Jack Kirby. So, that's all the Earths. Then we see back with Kamandi, the whole tomb is shaking, something's going wrong. They realize, oh, there's plenty of other worlds out there. And then in the wall of Darkseid's tomb, someone is carving in the words, "I found you." We see that they try to stick around and see what's going on. The new gods are like, oh god, Darkseid's here, but he's just one part of many. It's a whole thing going on. He's been corrupted by Nyx-Uotan, the super god, and the Empty Hand, which we don't know quite yet. So the new gods are like, all right, well, there's nothing we can do yet until our powers return in full, so we just have to sit here and watch. So Kamandi, Prince Tufton, and Biomac get out to the raft. They see that the sky is turned red because, of course, it's a crisis. And Nyx-Uotan is standing in the grave saying, oh, Darkseid I unleash you to plague creation in the name of the gentry, in the name of the empty hand. So back with Chibi Batman. He's like, okay, something crazy's going on. You're from Earth 17, I'm from Earth 42. We got to make a note in order to get this working. So he sees a flower that's sitting on the ground, which is the same flower that Commandi noticed over in his story. And all of a sudden, picking up that flower, it resonates with the machine and activates it. Atomic Knight Batman hears that his Earth on the other side. So he's like, my friends are beyond our door. That's our way out. The robot army breaks into the room, carrying a burnt but clearly robotic body of Chibi Martian Manhunter. And Chibi Batman's like, what? So Atomic Knight Batman holds it off, says, hey, tell my team, like, you know, I'll find my own way home. And that Luthex, one of his villains, is in league with Darkseid. So he sends Chibi Batman through. On the other side, the Atomic Knights are waiting, and it's like, hey, where's Batman? So tell us now, or you're going to die where you stand. And Batman looks down at his arm, which was damaged in the fight, and he sees that he's a robot. He has a robotic arm, and he's like, wait, I think I'm a machine, but I don't understand. Where am I? And the Atomic Knights see that he's holding the flower, and he's like, oh, that's the rose that grows in winter. Don't worry, you're safe here. You're going to be fine. Meanwhile, Atomic Knight Batman has been transported to the House of Heroes, the Rock of Eternity, and we see basically the whole group welcomes him in, and it's just like, hey, hope you're ready for a fight, man, because we got crazy stuff going on right now. And then all of a sudden the alarm's going off. The Harbinger Mind is under attack. It's one of the agents of the Gentry is attacking it, and they call out the House of Heroes, like, SOS, please save us. And as they say SOS, we see the remaining Chibi versions that are on the House of Heroes, Wonder Woman and Steel, their eyes go red, and they suddenly start seeming all evil. Back on Earth 42, the beaten up and broken bodies of the remaining Chibi universe are summoned by a mysterious figure with very unique speech bubbles who says, get up, reset, you've died before and you will die many more times before I'm done with you. See how my hand is empty. And they all stand up chanting, empty is thy hand. Okay. God, that is a book. All right. This is like everything. Like, I don't want to sound too like over enthusiastic about it, but like, I love the continuity stuff. I love the forethought and everything that goes into crafting these maps, these universes, reaching back to things that nobody would think of and saying, yep, that's in continuity. Like, it's so good the way that this was all crafted. The story itself is fine. Like, it works for what it is. It's pimping the Empty Hand as this huge, massive threat, which of course he is. I can't wait to see him outright. All the Chibi Universe stuff is a huge mystery in its own sense. Like, and it brings over stuff from the Thunderworld issue. This is the first issue that like directly says that issue just happened and we're moving into the next one, rather than it being this disconnected series of events. So yeah, I mean, this book is possibly one of the most important books, not like from a like cultural perspective, but kind of. I mean, how many people have seen that map? That map is everywhere. It is literally defined the past 10 years of DC Comics. So yeah, it's a big one. Overall, I think in terms of individual comic-wise, it's really hard to judge. I'm going to say 8.5. It just feels right for me. 9 seems like it would need to have a much more important framing device, but like everything else inside of it just makes it one of the most important comics DC has put out, which, damn, it is thick. Batman number 38, written by Scott Snyder, art by Greg Capullo. So last issue, we had Batman saving Duke from being Jokerized, and also Gordon was possibly killed by the Joker, who was shot. We see that Batman is flying Duke across Gotham City. He's talking about how this part of the city is managed to last everything. It's always been standing, and right up until now, because now it sucks. And so he busts into Jim Gordon's apartment, which is in this area. A bunch of people try to break in. Batman puts up some foam in order to stop them. And as he gets up the stairs, we see Jim has an axe in his chest. He's coughing. He's not all right, but like, he's trying to put on a good show for Batman. And Batman's like, dude, just chill. We're going to get you to the hospital. Everything's going to be fine. And Jim's like, I shot him, man. He was dead. I made sure he's got to be something else. And Batman's like, no, just just rest, man. So he tells Duke, hey, go get a first aid kit. And Duke kind of freezes. He's like, my parents, we let them. And Batman's like, I swear to God, I will help your parents out. But right now, I need to help this man. And in that moment, Gordon is infected. He stands up. He's got the axe out of his chest. And he's like, oh, Duke, don't listen to him. He's a bad friend. So it looks like Jim gets shot by some tranq darts. Turns out that Julia left the cave. She's here to help. And Batman's like, I thought I told you to stay put. And she's like, yeah, you're welcome, I guess, whatever. So saying, hey, we did some testing on the virus. Turns out it's super deadly. Like, it's not just normal Joker toxin. Like, it's actually going to kill these people via rotting their cells. And Julia's like, tell me this is normal. And he's like, nah, this isn't normal. This is messed up. So Duke hands over the first aid kit and it's like, look, Batman, you can do it. I know you can. Save everyone like you always do. And Batman's like, can do. So Julia and Duke go down to a cave, just staying out of the way. And Batman has to break out of the building and try to get away from all these people who are trying to kill him. He calls up Grayson and is like, hey man, did you get the blood sample I sent you? And he's like, yeah, I did. There's something regenerative in it. I'm not sure what it is, but like, it's stronger than any of the Lazarus pits. And Batman's like, okay, take a sample of the other thing I sent you, because it was, Jim Gordon. It was a spray pattern. It came from Joker's blood. And Grayson's like, oh, geez, man, you're not safe there. And he's like, yeah, nobody is. He's like, no, like where you're standing right now, it's being overrun by these zombies. So Batman grapple hooks away and is like, yeah, okay, tell me about the virus. And it's like, well, I'm putting up the virus and all this next to each other. And Batman's like, see if the regenerative property that you had before, if it matches the decaying cellular rot. And Grayson's like, yeah, it does. It's a perfect match. It's 1-to-1. And he's saying, yeah, okay, they're opposites. This is all just a game the Joker's playing. Opposites. It's tragedy and comedy, life and death, all that stuff. And he's like, okay, is there anything that I can do? Like, you need anything for me? And Batman gets attacked by a zombie driving a tank. Like, just a straight up tank just starts blowing at them. He's trying to get his way out, and he's like, look, shut up and listen. It has something to do with Arkham. I don't know what, I don't know how, but something in Arkham is what caused all this. So a bunch of people start piling on, start attacking Batman. He says there are only 3 people who have been capable of making this for Joker. And they were all part of the Bio Initiative when my uncle took over Wayne Enterprises. Dr. Karl Helfern, who was Dr. Death in the previous arc. Dr. Hugo Strange, who was in charge of the mind stuff, but he isn't seen in Gotham in forever. And Dr. Paul Decker, who worked on soft tissue. And Grayson's about to say who he is, but they leave it for a little reveal in a minute. And just like, yeah. And Decker was confined to Arkham until a year and a half ago, but he was released by Dr. Eric Border, who we know happens to be Joker. So it's like, all right, I know this guy. I know who he is. But I need to let you know, Grayson, Joker knows who I am. And he's just like, okay, so we have an unkillable Joker who knows your identity, and the entire city is overrun by zombies. I don't see a way out of this, man. And Batman's like, there's always a way out. Don't have to worry about it. So Grayson offers to show up. He offers to assemble the Bat family. And he's like, nope, I need you all safe just in case this doesn't work out. And they're like, come on, Batman, tell us the plan. And he's like, I don't have a plan. I am running without one right now. So we see Joker is swimming somewhere deep in some waters. We get to that later. But now we go over to Dr. Paul Decker, and we see Batman is investigating his lab of specifically a jellyfish tank. It's a whole thing about immortality, that there are some creatures in nature that can basically live forever by doing certain things. For jellyfish, they can turn back into like their younger form and then just regrow. Some of them can. And we see Paul Decker shows up. He's firing off shots at Batman, and he's wearing this big old quilt over him. Paul Decker's Crazy Quilt. That's the reveal. But it turns out that he's actually a scientist, and the reason that he took the name Crazy Quilt is because he found the healing stitch. And he said, as he's shooting his Batman, he's just like, hey, look, I couldn't make any of this stuff in a lab. Whatever was inside of Joker, it was shown to me by him. Like, he's the one who allowed me to explore my life's passion to finally get this. And we see that Paul has constantly been interested in all of these beings who have come into form with this certain material that he calls Dionysium. after the Greek god Dionysus. And apparently this is the thing that allows Vandal Savage to be immortal. This is the thing that allows Ra's al Ghul to come back to life. And also there are stories of a pale man in Gotham who was infected by it. And that's possibly what Joker is at this point. And Batman's like, no, that's not true. It can't be. And Crazy Quilt tries to shoot him some more, but Batman just ends up throwing him out a window. And he's like, look, you synthesized this. Clearly that's what it is. Tell me, where are you keeping it? Where's the cure for the virus? And Decker's just like, I didn't do a damn thing. Like, I've never been able to make this work. All of the stuff I got came from Joker's spine. And he's like, I've never seen it in any of the blood tests I've run on Joker. And he's like, it's only comes about during moments of extreme damage. Like, did he recently possibly, I don't know, fall off a cliff? And Batman's like, okay. So he's like, all right, well, where did he get it from? And Decker's like, you don't listen, do you? I told you. He's had it in him hundreds of years. He's immortal. He's always been here. And so Batman just like pins his quilt to the window, allowing him to dangle out over top of the zombies. And he calls over to Julia. Julia's like, hey, we figured out how long the rot's going to take in order to kill people. It's like 24 hours. We got like less than a day now. It's crazy fast. And she also says she's been studying the Joker photos, like all these doctored quote-unquote photos, but like they seem real. Everything about him seems real. And Batman's like, no, they aren't. It's all a trick. It's always been a trick. Don't fall for it. Meanwhile, Decker, dangling outside the window, pulls out a syringe and is like, now I'm going to be one of them too. And Batman's like, whoa. Did he give you that? Because I promise you it's not going to be what he says it is. And he's like, oh no, it definitely will be. Inject, die, just immediately rots. And Batman's like, all right, well, Crazy Quilt's dead. No big loss. And he looks out over Gotham. He sees everyone tearing apart each other. And he's like, this can't be the way it ends. This can't be real. And Julia says, what are you going to do? And he pauses and says, something I never thought I would. And we see that Batman is back in the labyrinth of the Court of Owls, saying, all right, let's talk history. When they frame it like that, I can see why Scott Snyder loves this Court of Owls, like why he created them. Because if you want to talk about history, boy, oh boy, Scott Snyder is your man. Cannot deny that. This was a solid issue. It feels like it was a little bit fast-paced for me. There was a little bit of just like a bit part in the middle where it just felt like, okay, it's kind of the same thing being said over and over, but it's just moving very quickly. It's just, yeah, there are immortal people. Dionysium's the element, and we know some people in DC Comics who have had it, and maybe Joker's one of them. That's possibly the coolest part for me, is, Scott Snyder says, hey, let's do something with that. I'm going to say this is I'll give it a solid 8. I think it's a very, very, very good comic, bordering on great, and I think we only get like 1 or 2 more parts to this arc, so let's see how Scott manages to wrap it up. Arkham Manor number 4, written by Gerry Duggan, art by Shawn Crystal. So last issue, turns out that Victor Zsasz is not behind all the killings, and also Eric Border is Joker, who corrupted a piece of Clayface to become Clownface. Roll with it. So we open up with some Arkham guards who are talking about, like, yeah, that Eric Border guy, he jumped down the hole, saved an inmate, and then took a vacation. Crazy. And all of a sudden, one of the inmates starts pounding, banging, trying to get attention, when Clownface sneaks up from behind, starts laughing maniacally, and, like, kills this inmate, pushing her against the wire fence, whatever you want to call it. So the laughter echoes through the halls. A couple of the higher-ups are like, oh God, is he back? And it's like, nah, that's not the Joker's laugh. That's something else entirely. And they look and they see an inmate walking down the halls, and it's Sybil Silverlock, who is in a coma. And all of a sudden, she's grabbed by Clownface. We see Batman in his inmate, whatever it is. I forget what his actual name is in this. Sorry, Jack Shaw. That was it. In his Jack Shaw persona, frees her, tells the guards to get her out of here, to run. Mr. Freeze's little trolley thing with the computer on it comes in, just being like, oh, wow, now we got a clown face now? That's crazy. So Batman picks up the monitor, smashes against Clownface's face, and manages to escape. So whereas the other guards are outside, Sybil manages to escape. He's like, whatever, I'll deal with that later. I got to figure out how I can stop Clayface / Clownface. So he goes into the cold storage room where one of the guards is standing by, and he's like, look, I got to keep this up. He knocks out the guard and says, all right, Clayface is killing people. You got to help me stop him. And sitting in the cold storage is Mr. Freeze, just looking at an ice cream like, why would I do that? And he's like, because I just broke the lock on your door, and he's going to be able to get in. And Mr. Freeze goes, touche. So they go out into the kitchen. They realize that there is a small amount of liquid nitrogen that he can use. And Mr. Freeze is like, why do you care about any of this? And he's like, I just want to be able to give myself parole to get out of here. So he's like, look, you're going to have to lure it this way. It's not mobile. So Batman goes out with an axe, starts running towards the screams. He sees a man is strapped down to a gurney as Clownface starts coming towards him. Batman chops away the restraints to be able to free him. And he's like, I recognize this man. Who is he? And he realizes that this is the guy who was in the alley the other night that basically allowed him to get into Arkham. He beat this guy up so badly. And he's just like, all right, I'm going to owe this guy a little bit. So Clownface is giving chase. They also come across Dr. Arkham and are like, hey, man, hop on the gurney. We're going. They all go back into the kitchen, and he's like, I hope Mr. Freeze didn't betray me. And of course, Mr. Freeze is nowhere to be seen. And then all of a sudden, he pops back out of the freezer, just being like, sorry, I wanted more ice cream. So Clownface busts in, and Jack tempts him, gets him closer. He attacks Jack Shaw, and Mr. Freeze ends up freezing Clownface. So he snaps off the little tendrils that are around Batman, and he's like, yeah, all right, put him in my room. I'm going to hate having him as a roommate, but it'll freeze him until we can get him more specifically put away. So at that point, Dr. Arkham's just like, all right, well, good job, inmates. Now lay down on the ground while the guards show up. And Batman just puts him in a sleeper hold, just being like, I'm going to get out of here. I need to get back to the cave, but I can't let down my persona in front of Mr. Freeze. The guy who's strapped to the gurney, he's like, take me with you. And he's like, no, you'll slow us down. So Mr. Freeze and Batman run outside, and he's like, look, I can't break the persona. I just got to let Mr. Freeze get away. I'll find him quickly enough. It's not a big deal. And then Mr. Freeze just stops, and he's just like, I'm not leaving. And Batman's like, why not? And he's like, because I got nowhere else to go. And he just lays down and starts making snow angels. So Batman goes. He finds a secret entrance to the cave that he knew about. He goes down. Alfred's cooked a big meal. Hush is still down there. I don't remember that being a thing, but sure. So he gets into his Batman outfit, and Alfred's cooked a huge roast turkey dinner, and Batman's like, sorry, can't have it tonight. And he's like, oh, all the better. I mostly just made it so that Hush would have to sit there and smell it. And then while he gets his like tiny little granola bar, and you see Hush just looking at the turkey like, God damn it. So Batman shows up to Dr. Arkham and is like, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to do whatever I can. I know who's been murdering the inmates at night. Like, you never stop to relax. You wouldn't have noticed that your sofa has been messed with. And he lifts up one of the cushions of the sofa, and underneath are all of these tools, all of these things, a gag, some handcuffs, some zip ties. And he's like, you were going to be next. And he looks like he was going to take his time. And he says, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And Arkham's like, what? He's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the guy in your ceiling. And one of the ceiling tiles just has a little hand like, come here, come on. Batman throws some batarangs at it, then jumps up into it, saying, lock down the facility. And as he gets up into the roof, we see him coming face to face with whoever this killer is, saying, prepare to house one more extremely dangerous offender. So, it's good. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to come back to the Jack Shaw stuff, because, like, I don't mind him just burning this identity. It feels like it served its purpose. Also, the Clownface thing was a little bit weird to me. I get it from the standpoint of, okay, larger universe, the Joker was Eric Border, we need to have something happen there, but I don't know, it just felt like it was kind of its own thing that doesn't really impact this killer running around the Arkham Manor plot yet. So I'm going to say this one's probably like a 7.5 for me. It's not bad. It's perfectly good issue. I love the moment where Hush is forced to just stare at the like giant turkey and just like, oh God, this sucks. But beyond that, it's strangely enough more of a funny book than it is one with actual like hard horror or tension or anything like that, which I didn't expect from an Arkham Manor book. So yeah, 7.5 for this. Catwoman number 38, written by Genevieve, Valentine, art by Garry Brown. So last issue was technically the annual, which was just talking about Eiko Hasegawa. Before that, we had Antonia had to kill her brother because he was a snitch for the police. So we open up this issue with Catwoman just falling more and more into darkness as Antonia seems to be getting visually more distant from her. And we see that because of all the stuff that's going on with the cops knowing about the docs and all that, everything's having to get shifted around. Everything's having to go crazy. So I was saying, yeah, we got to pay off the new watchmen, shift change plans, do everything we can. So Antonia confirms that Hasegawa is knows the ship's captain. Everything's on the up and up. And she's like, well, I hope that, one day she's going to be able to forgive me, but right now I got to worry about this. And she gets a note from Black Mask who says, hey, let's show up. Let's talk about everything that's happened. Show up in my tower. No weapons. And we see that Ward is basically like, okay, so it's a trap. And she's like, yeah, probably. But as long as we know that, let's go. And he's like, are you serious? So she says, Antonia, you manage things while I'm around or while I'm gone. We're going to go be dealing with this. And Ward says like, hey, did she say something? Like, is she cool with you? And he's like, nah, look, whatever happens, happens. We just got to deal with this. So we go to the meeting with Black Mask and that other business guy who I forget the name of. And she's basically like, okay, so what's up? Why are we here? And they're just like, look, we just want to talk about that very unfortunate situation with your cousin. It's a whole thing. What's going on with that? And she's like, if you expect me to talk about that, you may as well just shoot me now. And Black Mask is like, all right, look, I'm not here to torture you. This is about business. You came into my house unarmed. And she's like, no, I didn't. And one of the guys for Black Mask starts to pull out a gun. And Ward tries to move in the way of it, but Catwoman throws her stiletto, which ends up stabbing through this guy's hand and pinning it to a wall. And she's like, yeah, I had these shoes custom made. It's amazing, don't you think? Now, I want you to understand that if you cross me or my family ever again, you can imagine me taking these stilettos right across your grave. Got it? And so she just walks out. And she points out that Black Mask never even asked a question. Like, they weren't even talking about anything. So whatever he's got, he's already got. So Catwoman gets in the car and says, all right, so the Hasegawa girl, she's going to be at the docks tonight. And she gets confirmation. She's like, yep, all right, cancel that. We need to set fire to all of this. And we're just like, what do you need? So we see the gun deal going down, all the drugs, all the guns being moved about, and Catwoman's like, okay, or Selina is like, okay, here's hoping we have everything we need. The Falcons didn't send a lot of men, and she ends up stepping away as the deal is going through, and as the ship starts sailing away, it's like, it's done, the guns are gone, we've got the money, and then who shows up behind her but Batman? And Selina's just like, just walk away. I've got this under control. I planned for this. You gotta let me do this. And Batman's like, I know what you've done, and I'm sorry, but I can't let you do this. And she's like, all right, well, then count to 3. And as Batman's like, what are you talking about? Down on the ground, police show up. They start arresting everybody. Catwoman, however, Selina, it's going to get confusing. Selina starts attacking Batman with the whip. And it's a little hand-to-hand combat thing, but eventually he's got her with her hands behind her back, and he holds his forehead against hers, just like, come on, stop this. But she ends up batting away, just being like, go look for somebody you can save, because it's not here. And then in comes Catwoman, aka Eiko, who's like, oh, hey, Batman, nice to see you again. And Selina's like, oh, of course they have already met. And she's like, yeah, I got worried when you took me off the job. Something wasn't right here. And he's like, all right, so what, you're here to pick sides? And she's like, no, I'm here to stop the deal. And Selina's like, yeah, that's why we're all here, okay? And so Catwoman's just like, all right, so what's the problem? She's like, nothing. I'm trying to get this done without anybody dying. Get out of here before I can't end up fixing this. Catwoman's like, all right, no problem. I'll tell my father's men to stand down. And bounces away. And Batman's just like, look, you're not this. Stop being this. And she's like, it's too late for that. So she goes off, and he's basically like, you're a fighter. And she's like, no, I've lost. And Just give up on me already. So she bails away. We see all the people down to the docks, including Antonia, are being arrested by the cops. They're walked into the place, and one of them says, Alvarez. And she's like, wait a minute, you're the guy that my brother spoke to. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So she gets put in a cell. She's talking to Alvarez's partner, though, and is like, hey, look, tell me who's the one who gave the anonymous tip that we were there, because otherwise my boss is going to be pissed off that she has to go looking for it. And the partner's just like, your boss can handle some trouble. And she's like, oh, yeah? How about you? Can you handle trouble? Because here's some advice. Your partner has put a major problem on all this, and either you follow him out and you will have to deal with those consequences, or you can come out on our side and you might be able to live through them. And as she goes back to Alvarez, he's like, any problems? She's like, no. So we see Hasegawa is pissed off that a bunch of his men are in custody because they've literally got a bunch of heroin on them, and just like, all right, whatever, they'll take responsibility, they'll take their sentences, it won't come back to us at all. There's a meeting, though, called tonight for Black Mask, and he wants his daughter to show up there, and she's like, why should I? And it's like, because you're going to be taking over the Empire one day. You got to understand what that means. So she shows up to Black Mask meeting. We see Antonia gets freed from prison by Ward, and she's just like, oh, it's good to see you. Like, the guy who caused my brother to get killed was in there, and like, I can't believe it was all for nothing. Like, he snitched, and like, everyone still got caught. Like, what was the point? And Selena is off just reminiscing, like trying to focus on work, trying to figure out what to do. We see Black Mask meeting go on, and basically he's saying like, look, Calabrese family's failed. I can do better. Why don't you, like, we'll have a democracy rather than the dictatorship she's got going on. And one of them chimes up like, the Calabreses have treated us with respect, and that's been a whole thing. It's like, yeah, and you've lost 15 men. Anybody else want to pipe in? So they call for a vote, like, all right, all in favor of ridding ourselves of the Calabreses. And like half the people raise their hand, but the other half raise the point that this isn't everybody. This isn't all the families represented. So like even half the city is staying with the Calabreses at this point. So Aiko talks to one of the guys who was there. Apparently they know each other. And he's like, sorry, I can't stay. I got to run. Got to deal with something. And he goes off down into a secret basement that inside is the Penguin. And he's like, yeah, look, Here's the deal, Penguin. That meeting shows that either Black Mask or Selena has to die before the families can be truly united. Like, that's how this is going to go. And Penguin's like, well, time to eliminate the easiest unnecessary party. So we see Selena is waiting to talk to somebody inside a bar. It might be Ward. It's a little bit confusing. I think it might actually be the lawyer guy on Sionis' side. And she accidentally almost steps in front of a car, to which that guy comes in and saves her at the last moment. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't let that happen to you. And she's like, why? And he says, what are brothers for? As he walks away into the night. I don't know if that means they're actual brother-sister, because that's an entirely new dynamic of that. I'll admit, this book is kind of like not meant to be read month to month. I think that this book is much better to be read all at once in a solid trade, when you are able to keep track of all of the characters, all of their motivations, who's still in, who's still out, all of that all at once. Reading it month to month, you need a better memory than me, at the very least, because it is dense. So it's not bad by any means. It is just kind of getting a little bit confusing, probably a bit too much for its own good. I think I'm probably going to say this one is a 7 for me, just because as much as I'm loving all the political intrigue, the crime families and whatnot like that, it is missing a larger goal, I feel like. I thought this big deal was going to be the thing, but ultimately it seems like it's just this vague power struggle, which is never going to end. So however we get to that point and maybe give a bit more of a definite, here's what we're gunning for, then I'll be a bit more interested. But for now, 7. Gotham Academy number 4, written by Becky, Cloonan, and Brendan Fletcher, art by Karl Kerschl. So last issue, the gang went into a secret, old abandoned place on campus, and then Olive got her arm grabbed by some creepy, scaly green hand. This issue picks up sometime afterwards. So we see Pommeline and Olive standing in front of the North Hall And they're like, oh, that was such a mistake. That wasn't the ghost that we were looking for. That was something else. As we messed up big time because we left the door open. They know somebody went in there, and now the whole thing is sealed off, so we're not going to be able to get any answers. And Olive's like, what if we tell like a professor that we can trust or something like that? And Pomeline's like, no, we'll be expelled. Like, we're all on our own here. And they're in the middle of gym class. So they start getting chewed out by their gym teacher for not running laps. But Olive gets called to the headmaster's office. And as she's there, she starts panicking, like, oh, God, he must know it was us. Oh, God, we're going to get so much detention. But as she looks up at the wall, she notices a symbol that's like two inverted crosses with each other. And he's like, wait a minute, that looks exactly like the symbol that Maps found inside of the journal or whatever. And we see her, Olive walks her way over to a window, looks out it, and then across the way is Bruce Wayne talking to Professor McPherson. And apparently they went out or something, because he's like, look, Ela, about the other night. And it's just like, no, don't worry about it. Let's just call me by my professional name. And as she's standing there, the headmaster comes up saying, like, hey, be careful near that window. And he's all creepy about it, but be careful near that window. The keystone is a bit loose. And he's like, oh, yes, master. And he's like, okay, by the way, some of the buildings are a bit dangerous around here. You know anything about the North Hall? Maybe the break-in? And she's like, I saw that there was danger tape. I don't think I'll ever go near it. And he's like, yeah, of course you won't. So she leaves. She looks back up that symbol. It's inside of the diary that she's got. And as she's paying attention to it, she ends up slipping down the stairs. And that weird, cute blonde boy comes up, saves her from being falling. And it's just like, oh, that's not the first time I've caught you while you were falling. And she's like, what? Are you talking about this summer? And he's like, here, you dropped your bag. See ya. And then he just walks off. And she's like, hey, wait a minute. Hold on. We then see that Kyle is there, and she just walks away like, I just can't even deal with this right now. So she goes to an art class that Maps is in, tries to get her attention, says like, hey, look, Hammer's onto us, but like, I need you to tell me what this symbol means, because like I've seen it in a bunch of places going on here. And she's like, okay, hold on. And she starts looking through her notes, and she's like, by the way, I talked to your brother, and me and him both think it's probably best. And Maps just interrupts her and just like, well, here is a floor plan, but I don't know what the symbol has to do with it. Like maybe it relates to that stuff somehow. And they say, hey, didn't that boy who's also in your art class have it sketched in his sketchbook? And we see him just like sketching away and just like, yeah, let's go interrogate him. So they go over, they start asking him questions. He starts freaking out. He just grabs all of his stuff and runs. And as he runs, he leaves behind some papers, which is the script for Macbeth. So he's like, oh, I know where he's going. So they go to the drama department, and they're keeping an eye out for him, but he doesn't show up anywhere on stage. As they are waiting for him to show up, all of a sudden the drama teacher comes out and be like, hey girls, you want to be in the play? We've got some super cool swords that we've made for the sword fight scenes. And Maps is all into that. But Olive's just like, hey, do you maybe know where this one kid is? And he's like, you're going to have to be more specific than that. But he's pointing out the swords to Maps and says, take a look at the hilt. We've got this good craftsman in the props room. He's a very intense little fellow, and he doesn't say much, but he does great work. And immediately Maps and Olive are like, okay, we know where he is. So they go to the props room. They start interrogating him. Maps just gets more and more intense as Olive's playing good cop, like, hey, I can't. She's going to do whatever she's going to do. And he's like, I'll never tell. So she pulls out the journal, says, hey, look, it's inside Millie Jane's diary. Tell me what you know. And he's just like, oh yeah, symbols everywhere, in the old chapel, the library, your dorm. And she's like, wait a minute, what were you doing near the girls' dorm? And he's like, So he goes, he bounces. We then see the girls are getting prepped to investigate that night. They're packing up bags with like rope and stuff like that, because you never know when you're going to need a good length of rope. And then as they look out the window, ghost of Millie Jane right there, freaking out. And Olive runs over to the window as it starts to move away. She's trying to pull it up. It won't budge. She's like, screw this. I'm not letting it get away. She grabs a flashlight and bashes the window open, grabs hold of the ghost. It's a puppet. It's fake, and it's strung up from the roof. And she's like, oh, I knew it. So Maps is told to finish packing while she goes up to the roof. We see that it is Heathcliff and some other boy I'm unfamiliar with. And the other boy's just like, I gotta go, bye. And Heathcliff is like, hey, Olive, how's it going? And I was just like, how dare you? Your girlfriend, Pommeline, believes in all of this junk, and she's going to be so pissed off when she finds out you've been faking it. And he's like, you cannot tell her. She'll kill me. I was doing this for her. She's been so desperate to summon a ghost. I thought, I'd give her a ghost. Like, I just want to make her happy. And I was like, yeah, all right, fine. I'll keep it between us. And she pulls out Heathcliff's pin for Ashes on Sunday, and it's just like, hey, where'd you find this? I was like, oh, I found it on the ground. In return, I need you to answer a question of mine. Who's that cute blonde boy? And she's like, well, are you interested? And she's like, no, shut up. And he's like, oh, well, his name's Tristan Gray. He's some kind of an exchange student. And she gets, a little bit combative once he says, like, oh, yeah, ask him to the dance. So they're cool. Everything's fine. And we see Olive starts making her way back downstairs through the dorm. And we see that she notices the symbol again. And she's like, wait a minute. They all said that they were loose. They were loose stones. What happens if and she goes to push on it, open secret staircase. And she starts making her way through. And it turns out this is the space between the walls of the girls' dorm. So she goes and she peeks through one of the cracks into Pommeline's room, who is talking to Heathcliff, and then her mom calls and just like, no, Mom, it's not a phase. So then she goes down a bit further and she finds Maps, who's still waiting in her dorm. And she's like, hey, Maps, I'm in the wall. And she's like, oh my God, that's awesome. What's it like in there? And she's like, just hold on. So she goes across and finds her own dorm, Olive's dorm, where her roommate Lucy is kind of just like, yeah, I like Olive. She's nice, but like, she got real weird over the summer, and I don't know if I really want to keep rooming with her and all that. And I was like, oh man, I didn't even know wait a minute, hold on. And she looks down the hall to the rest of the space here, right behind her dorm room wall, and it looks like someone has been living here. And she's like, what? And she picks up a photo of her and her mother with her face circled, and she's like, what? And then all of a sudden, Killer Croc. Killer Croc comes stepping out. He's wearing an Arkham uniform. He's chained up, whatever. And he just looks down at Olive. And Olive's like, it's okay. I won't tell anyone you're here. But you knew my mom, and you got to tell me what the hell's going on here. So, Killer Croc. He's involved somehow. Big deal there. Yeah, no, I think this is the first issue that I really got invested and like actually really cared about the characters to some extent, because I think for all the previous issues it's just been this thing where there was a bit too much mystery and not enough answers. This one started providing the answers of, okay, what about this ghost thing? Okay, here's the explanation. Who's this blonde kid? Oh, we get the explanation. What's this symbol about? Here's half of an explanation. Like, I appreciate the fact that they are giving answers here while also still keeping this larger mystery of like her mother and all this other stuff going on with her a little bit more on lockdown. So overall, I think this one is a solid, I almost want to say 8, but I'm going to go with the 7.5, but it's a very strong 7.5. I think the only thing I would ask for a little bit more is just reminders of characters. Like I said, there's a couple in here where like, I'm not sure if I'd met that blonde kid on the roof with Heathcliff. I'm not sure if I was supposed to follow that Bruce Wayne was dating one of the professors, or at least going out with her. Just a couple little tiny things to remind me month to month what's going on. But that's really my only major critique. The rest of it's just up to taste. Gotham by Midnight, number 3, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Ben Templesmith. So last issue wrapped up the weird little children abducted nun thing going on, but it left us with this gibberish language that was seemingly promising a threatening new super monster in Gotham. So we open up this issue with the Gotham County Hospital calling in Precinct 13. We see Corrigan and Drake are watching some surveillance footage. They're being shown it by some doctors, and it's like, well, we had this girl, we put her into isolation because we were like reasonably sure we knew what she had, but then check this out, and we see that her shadow on the wall is different from her body, and the doctor's like, oh good, you caught it. And Drake asks, hey, what did you think she had when she came in? It's like, well, we thought she had smallpox, which is an issue because it's highly infectious, and also we like wiped it out. And she's showing all the signs for it, but our treatment is not actually doing anything for her. Also, she's vaccinated for it. So then, as they're watching more of the surveillance tapes, all of a sudden the shadow leaps out at the girl and has a little heart that looks like some sort of weird Venus flytrap fungus thing going on. So he's like, well, that's why we're here. So we go to years ago, and this is just a general flashback thing. I'll go ahead and just do the flashback now, but just know it's interspersed between. We see that there's a drug deal going on, and the guy's like, oh, hey, don't worry, I got this girl here. She's Drake. Drake's cool, though. She's going to be fine. And we see the drug dealer's like, hey, you were told to come along, but we don't know this girl. She could be a cop for all we know, but screw her. And he's like, no, she's cool. So he's like, all right, cool. Well, instead of paying us with money, today you're going to be doing a little job for us. And it's like, what? That's not how things work. And he pulls out a gun just being like, that's how things are going to work today. And so they lead him outside the car and say, all right, so here's what the job is. And they pop open the trunk, and in the trunk is Corrigan. So they show the guy, he's getting sick, he's throwing up, he doesn't want to do it. And instead they have Drake immediately break character. She's with the GCPD. It's like, all right, freeze. Everyone hands up. And it's like, oh, of course she's a cop. And so the guy who originally had the gun, who was sick, he surrenders immediately. Someone gets the drop on Drake, though, has a gun to her head and says, like, oh, cops always had to have a partner so no one could sneak up on them. And then she lets out this ear-curdling scream that causes all of them to fall to their knees. And it's like, what the hell was that? And so immediately Drake puts two in their heads. They're both shot, and they go down. We see her get Corrigan out of the car, and he's just like, hey, I remember you, Corrigan, back before you got all weird. You were in the GCPD. It's like, yeah, and I remember you, Drake, and you took down all these guys by yourself. I like that trick you did. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You didn't see anything, right? And she's like holding the knife, and he's like, yeah, right, didn't see anything. Anyway, they were selling this type of drug called skull dust. It's made from fairy bones. And she's like, it's made from what? And he's like, don't worry about it. So she starts complaining about how she has to now do a psych appointment because she killed somebody, and he's like, well, I'll sign whatever paperwork you pass my way, even if it happens to say that these guys were, having one up on you, and you took them out without having to use some weird scream power. But for that scream, like, sometimes I'm sure you feel like it's building up inside you, and you just need to let it out. Like, you don't even know what you are you? Do you? And she's like, what, you have information about what I am? Because I'd love to hear it. And he's like, yeah. I'm putting together a little team. Would you be interested in joining? And so that's where that leaves off. Just the origins of how Drake joined the team. So the rest of the story, we cut back over to the Precinct 13. And we see that Dr. Tarr is listening to the gibberish audio, like 40 hours of it, just as much as he can. And he's trying to use some linguistic tricks to figure out what it is. And he gets a call from Corrigan saying, like, hey, I got one you want to see. Are you busy? And he's like, oh, yeah, we've been running stuff on the tape. We're understanding a bit more of the language. We think O represents like I or me. So one of them was saying that their name is Ovovo. And it's like, oh, well, that's something at least. Anyway, I got a shadow with like a weird heart fungus thing going on. It's attacking people. And Tar just sprints out of the room. Just like, don't touch anything. I'll be back soon. Bye. So they put on some hazmat gear. They make their way into the isolated chamber, making sure that nothing can get out. Corrigan's staying back because he's like, I'm plan B, just in case it does get out. So they go inside, Doctor and Drake. The doctor looks at the shadow and just like, oh, hey, remember, we're here to help. We're here to assist you however we can. It's entirely safe. The suits are sealed. And then the shadow's hand passes over his face, and it just kills him. He's just dead, like liquefied in a suit. And Drake's like, okay, this is a problem. It doesn't need to get him through the suit. Something's happening. And we see that it also was able to escape through a tiny window that was left unsealed. And Corrigan's like, whoops, that's a problem. So it starts moving around the hospital, starts just killing everybody. Dr. Tarr shows up, and he's like, don't touch it. Don't let it touch you. It's infecting people. Something about smallpox. Corrigan's like, is the shadow still attached to the girl? And he starts struggling against the specter inside of him. He's like, oh, geez, whatever we got to do, like, we got to do it fast. If this thing gets out, it could lead to millions dead. So we see Corrigan trying to hold in the specter, just being like, everybody's dying, but like, if I do about it, 1,000 people in this hospital are going to die. And so inside the room, Drake is trying to help the little girl control the shadow, do what she can. Meanwhile, Dr. Tar Zandor is talking to the shadow. He's using his very broken dialect of what he understands from the tapes, and it starts talking back. And immediately Corrigan's like, keep doing that. Keep it busy. We'll figure out what we can do otherwise. So inside the room, Drake has a flashlight, just like, look, it's a shadow, right? What if I shine a flashlight on it? Maybe that would like hurt it somehow. So we see Tar is still talking to it, barely trying to get any sort of information it can. And we see that inside the room, Drake does manage to separate the girl from the shadow by using a flashlight. And it seems to just go up in flames immediately, the moment that flashlight hits it. So the girl passes out. It's gone from all the other rooms. And Tar's like, okay, well, I have some ideas as to what happened. But we're going into quarantine, aren't we? Because we were just exposed to a deadly pathogen, right? And he's like, yeah, unfortunately, that's what's going to happen. But let's get a sort of exorcist thing coming up if we can. And as they're going in, Tar's saying, hey, by the way, it said its name was Icht. Icht is the name that we have on our list, so that's one of them. And Corrigan's like, yep, all right, Gotham's under attack, and whatever's coming, it's going to be big. So, yeah. Good next chapter, sets up this monster threat a little bit more. I will say the flashback sequence, as much as I was able to describe it even kind of well for you guys, I think that it was probably the most confusing part, because it's completely like black and white, for lack of a better word, and a lot of the way that you can interpret who characters are in this book is via color. It's very stylized, so it kind of got a little bit confusing, and I was just kind of forced to rely on, okay, that one's Drake because they're telling me that one's Drake. So, yeah, beyond that, it's solid intrigue. I think the art style still works for this book, but it is sometimes a little bit hard to parse what's going on. I'm going to give this one I'll just give it a flat 7. It's still good. It's still a solid book, just not quite up there for this one. Red Lanterns number 38, written by Landry Q. Walker, art by Jim Calafiore. So, new writer, but strangely enough picking up on an older arc. So, if you remember, a while back, Atrocitus attacked Earth, gave a bunch of people rage powers. Turns out that didn't really go away. So we see that there are a few cities that were really overcome with rage, and they still are, and they're just kind of war zones. So, guys sitting out in like this bombed out looking bar. A bunch of military guys bring in a rage-infected person with, like, cuffs around him, like, super hard to control. And just like, look, we grabbed him. He's separated from the riot, which is what they're calling the group. He just keeps screaming and kicking. That's all we've got. But you're a superhero. And he's like, not really, but, I'll do what I can. So he pulls out the ring, takes a swig of alcohol, pulls out the ring again, and applies it to the guy's head. And he is able to look into his head in order to see what's going on. It's a trick that he picked up from the judge earlier on, and he's like, yeah, I didn't know the ring could do this, but I'm able to trace back his anger, and he sees so much stuff. It's not just this guy, though. It's like a bunch of different people. It's a collective rage going on, and as he comes out of it, he gets hit by it. The military's super scared about this because, like, this guy, he was possibly infected by whatever this rage thing is. He's like, no, I'm good. Just give me a minute. And he like processes the anger. And they're like, all right, did you learn something? He's like, yeah, I did. The world sucks. Now get me another. So he goes through like 17 more people until finally he gets enough information to say, okay, I know where these guys are. There was a tent set up to like help these people after Atrocitus attacks. But of course, all of them being enraged, it kind of just got torn apart. He makes his way through the parking lot to the tent. And there's one guy who's just like barely holding on, and he comes up to Guy with all this rage. And Guy looks into his mind, and he sees the exact same image again, which is a pile of dead or dying bodies, all of them infected with rage. And it's like, what is going on here? And this guy just burns out. Like, red energy explodes from him. He's no longer there. And everything else from this point on, by the way, is all an internal monologue that Guy is saying. So it's a lot of stuff of like, I'm so angry, this could happen to me, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, he's like, this guy just burned up from the inside. Maybe that's what's happening to all of them. I gotta pick up pace. So he wonders more about the shared mind. He starts going, trying to find the place where they were at. He walks his way down this makeshift tent that was put out, and he's like, yeah, there were hundreds of people in this town that were starving, scared, hungry. They were all here. But there was no way that they could be saved in this spot. Like, it was all just temporary, and there was no space either. Like, where would they put the sick? Where would they put the dying? Where would they put the dead? And we see him discover a secret basement, and down in the bottom is pretty much everyone who was injured, and they were just tossed in here to die. Like, they were left in a giant pit. And Guy immediately freaks out. He's like, all of these people, they were screaming in the darkness. They had this collective rage that was so strong that it manages to live on after their death as just this feeling in the air, just this overarching rage that can just be felt. And Guy gets so pissed off, freaked out about that, he just burns all the bodies. All of them catch on fire. And he's like, I'm sorry, please, I'm so sorry. And as he makes his way back up to the top, he sees more and more of the rage-infected people are coming after him. And he's like, this thing is spreading too fast. I may just have like hours, and by then everyone else will be burnt out. And we see more and more people are attacking him. And he's like, I could just kill them. I could just kill them all. And he blasts all of them away with his Red Lantern energy. It doesn't kill them. He does have some restraint, but he's like, they're already dead, they're already dying, and the rage would only grow. It only continues to be in the air. So he's like, I need to stop letting the rage be able to grow and fester. It's like an infection. I need to let these people cure their rage. I need to give them an out. Give them an ability to take out their rage on someone who's responsible for their pain and suffering. And he realizes Atrocitus caused this. I'm wearing the same symbol as Atrocitus. I'm a Red Lantern. They could take it out on me. And so he lowers back down into the crowd. They all start beating the ever-loving crap out of him. And this entire time he's just like, yeah, angriest man in the universe. I've taken so many lives before, and it took me so long to be able to get my redemption for that, to make up for that. And then in just one day, things that I've caused 1,000 more people to die. So like, it's never enough. It's always I'm the one person I can never get revenge against. And he says how he has so much to answer for. This is his own repentance. And as all the people go and attack him, they all start burning themselves out on the rage, and it shows it going critical. They're unable to hold back anymore. They're so angry they start burning, and they all catch on fire together, which seems to burn out the rage in the air. It dissipates, it goes away. He allowed hundreds of people to die in order to save thousands. And he's like, yeah, but still not me. I'm still too angry to die. So he gets back up on his feet, and he looks around at the city, which has been destroyed, and he's like, yep, this is my world now. And that's it. That's the issue. It feels like a one-shot, if I'm being honest. It feels like, okay, we've just got a one thing. Let's examine Guy. Let's see his mental state. How is he doing? Not great. But this writer is going to be on the next 2 issues as well. He's wrapping up the series himself. So I could see this becoming the marching order for like this last little arc of Guy is Red Lantern. Maybe we want to move him away from that. Maybe we do want to get him back into a Green Lantern state before the book ends. Maybe he can work through some of this anger. Maybe he can actually find a way to come to terms with that. I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen here, but it at least leaves the door open for a bunch of different possibilities. I'm going to say, though, that this is I'm going to say a 6.5. It's nothing personal against it. It's just not quite up to something that I thought was a really good read. It kind of just felt monotonous after a while. Like I said, it's all told internal monologue of Guy, and it kind of just boils down to like, I suck. I suck so much. I'm so angry at me because I suck so much. And yeah, I get that for a page or 2, but this was like 12. So it's 6.5. Not great, but still decent. Sinestro number 9, written by Cullen, Bunn, art by Brad Walker. So last time was all the New God stuff, blah, 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 that wrapped up. This issue picks up talking about more of the paling, the pale vicars, the emotionless church. So we cut out to a planet in far space that's nothing but dust and bones, and it was apparently a paradise. Everything was great, everything was awesome, and then once every decade, the entire planet would come together in this massive joy festival to celebrate everything being awesome. And it was so happy, it brought the Pale Vicars, it brought the church, who showed up, stripped them of all of their life and happiness and whatnot, and left them as pale, emotionless husks. So as saying that, it's like, yeah, all right, if the planet looks familiar, and this is some group we're not familiar with, is like, oh, looks familiar, so much like our own home planets. They're devouring everything in their paths. We have to get stronger. We have to arm ourselves. So we then cut back over to Space Sector 3601, which is a little shard of a planet that the Yellow Lanterns are investigating because there is a SOS signal coming from some Korrigarians. And as they arrive here, it's like, well, I don't see any Korrigarians, and it's a small enough rock that it should be obvious. And Soranik's like, look, whatever, we'll find it, it's here. And Arkillo shows up, he's got the thing, and he's like, I found the beacon, but there's literally no Korrigarians, I don't know where it is. And he's trying to talk to Sinestro, but Sinestro is just lost in his own world, just staring wistfully away. And Soranik's like, he's been like that ever since we got back from the New God thing, what's up? And Lissa comes up saying like, oh, not a what, but a who. He gave a ring to Becca of the New Gods, and she still hasn't answered his calls. She left him on red. She's ghosting him. And it's messing with his mind, because that's like her New God power. And however powerful he is, she still feels a bit of a... He still kind of likes her. And Lissa's kind of like very pissed off about that, to the point where one of them's just like, oh, Jesus, it's get colder in here all of a sudden. So Arkillo's pissed off about that because he lost fingers to Becca. And just like, oh, screw that. She doesn't deserve to be in the Corps. To which Lissa's like, if it affects Sinestro, clearly she's able to be in the Corps. And we see Sinestro just being like, look, I'm half thinking about that, but also someone brought me a lot of trouble to bring me here to this planet. Like, using the Korrigarians, someone wanted me to come here. And so he looks around the planet a little bit more, and he ends up finding a whole bunch of corpses of dead Korrigarians. And he has anger boiling up inside of him as he looks, and he sees they are covered in this strange black flower. And he's like, all right, I know who this is, but just in case, I'm going to run a test on it. And he tells his ring to identify the species, and it says Black Mercy, to which point Lissa comes over being like, okay, yeah, we all know who this is. And Soranik comes over, starts looking at the flowers, and he's like, be careful not to touch it. And Sinestro turns over to Lissa, and she's like, show me where to find him. And we see, what's his name, Dez is in this crew, and he's like, Lissa's prophetic. Surely she would be able to say whether or not Becca responds to the offer. Maybe she's just trying to cause some chaos. And Arkillo's like, that's literally all you do, dude. Shut up. I'm sick of it. I don't want to hear it anymore. And Soranik is like, oh my god, these flowers were meant to be able to help people during their final days, now being used as a weapon. To which Arkillo's just like, oh, well, our enemy put them in order to subdue his prey, and then he gave them later nightmares. And Sinestro's like, bro, that's my people. Shut up. So he goes off with Lissa to go deal with that. He leaves the rest of them to go get the rest of the Corps ready, get them all set to answer his call. Dez is just like, Soranik, it seems like you actually care about the well-being of your father, because she's a bit concerned that he's going off on his own. And Soranik's just like, you know what, I agree with Arkillo. You suck, Dez. No one likes you. So they go off for the Yellow Lantern Corps as we see Lissa and Sinestro arrive at War World. And he's like, Mongol's here. We all know it's Mongol. Not going to pretend that doesn't. He doesn't know I have parallax in me, so he has no idea what kind of power he's fighting against here. He thinks he can step up to me and kill my people. Watch this. And they just start tearing apart Warworld, going crazy. However, there's something in the atmosphere that starts draining away his power levels. It goes down to 60%, 55, 50. And he's like, Lissa, give me a charge. I need just a little bit more to be able to tear this guy apart. So she starts charging back up, and then all of a sudden Mongol pops out and tackles Sinestro down. And apparently, this is something that happened before New 52. Mongol was in charge of the Yellow Lanterns for some time, And then he lost it to Sinestro because Sinestro embarrassed him. Because he says, you embarrassed me. I want my Mongol core back. So at that point, he chews out Sinestro for now playing the role of superhero. And it's like, oh, how bad for your core. They could really use a real strong leader. And Lissa comes up just like, don't you talk to my man that way. And she gets blasted off to the side. We then see Sinestro uses his remaining Yellow Lantern energy to construct a hand that reaches out of Mongol's mouth. And he's like, you may think yourself impervious, but no, I found a way in. You don't want to know where. And he just starts choking out Mongol, but of course the power levels keep on dropping. He's unable to maintain the construct. And Mongol's just like, oh, I have anticipated this day for so long. Your power will be mine again. And so they start flying around, start choosing, like blasting through a bunch of World ships without seeming to care. And Sinestro's like, I could pull out Parallax right now, but I think it might be wiser for me to just wait it out, see what's going on, because that's a real trump card I like to pull out. So he's down to 20%, 15%, and Sinestro's just like, I hate Mongol so much. He craves control, he craves order. He reminds me of me, but he's an idiot. So I hate him that much more. And he grinds Mongol against the ground of his own planet, like really messing him up. And as Sinestro stands to gloat, all of a sudden he's blasted by a major laser from off the side of the panel. And in comes the Apex League, the guys that we saw at the beginning, I believe, who were saying, hey, Sinestro, I could have killed you with that, but I've shown you mercy. So surrender now or face the Apex League. I remember them. They were in a previous issue. They barely showed up, though, so I don't recall that much about them. Mongol and Black Mercy, okay, it's fine. If this is going to actually relate to something more than Mongol saying, give me the Yellow Lantern rings back, I will appreciate it. I think in the current trajectory, though, it seems like that probably is going to be all it is. It's like, haha, I killed some Korrigarians. Now you got to show up so I can steal your power. Sure, whatever. It's just not going to be my most interesting plot. Apex League seems interesting. The Church still seems interesting, so I'm down for that sort of stuff. But honestly, I'm more curious about the whole Becca thing, because I thought that was just going to be a thing that gets resolved and we just have a new member of the Corps, but it seems like they're actually going to hold on that for a while. So we'll see how long that takes to get out of it. All in all, I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. It's pretty standard. It's nothing too standout for this issue, but also not a bad one either. So 7 for this, and we'll see what happens with the rest of all those mysteries. Aquaman number 38, written by Jeff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier. So last issue, Aquaman fought against Grodd, went through one of the portals with him, and seemingly is going to end up God knows where. That was absolutely a made-up ending. So what happens is they go through the portal, Grodd's like, freedom, Aquaman grabs the trident back and says, yoink, and then dumps Grodd in this parallel dimension and then goes back through the open portal before it closes. And he's like, what? Huh? Where did God go to? It's like, oh, he didn't escape. It was a dimension that was the Greek labyrinth. Like, it's endless. There's no way he's going to be able to escape. And that's definitely not where my mom went. So how'd that happen? And Mara's like, that was me. I noticed that God was on his way over to the portal. Like, he was fighting in this direction. So I switched out the tablets, and I thought that'd be a good idea. And Aquaman's like, oh my God, I love you so much. So all of a sudden, the portal lights up with Stephen Chin's face, and he's like, hey, we were watching what happened. Can we come through? And it's like, sure. So they come through the portal. And Mara's like, how the hell did you manage that? I thought we need the trident. It's like, oh, well, we figured, like, if you need the trident, that meant that the royals had to be, like, in charge of transportation all day. That didn't make any sense. So you can also just use the Elder Keys. And also, if you tap it to it, you can look through them. Real convenient, right? So Shin's basically like, oh, yeah, okay, it's good to feel the sun again. Anyway, we found the corresponding tile in Atlantis. It was destroyed. We know now that the Atlanteans used something about the quantum structure of the Earth. There are pocket realms that are part of our dimension, but separate. They are fixed in time. And the gorillas are like, oh, we made similar projections. And the other kids' science is just like, yeah, okay, well, one of the dimensions was for the labyrinth. There were 2 others that the Atlanteans could exploit, one of which was where a bunch of monsters were held until some idiot opened it up, and Arthur's like, it's okay, man, you can let it go. Also, what's the other one? He's like, well, we're not sure, but we think they had big plans for that realm, but someone worked hard to smash all the tiles. And they show it's like a hurricane-looking thing, or a whirlpool shape. So it's like, okay, let's introduce... It's called the Ocean Vortex, or the Maelstrom. And so Mara's like... Mara pulls out the one that was the one she originally hid from there, being like, this was the one that was actually because your mother used it, so we can go ahead and put that back in, see where that's going to. And it's like, all right, well, she must have taken the Maelstrom plate with her so that nobody else could follow. So this is going to be the second to last step. This is where she's going. And so they jump in. Mara's like, are you sure you can't wait until the scientists check this out? And it's like, are you sure you can't wait to not come with me? And she's like, no. So they both hop in. As they come out the other side, it is under the ocean. And it's like, okay, it's a bit weird, but this was made before, like, Atlantis was underwater, so maybe this just sunk. So they go up to the island over top. It's somewhere in the middle of Polynesia. Arthur starts talking Polynesian to them, and he uses a word that they don't understand, the Maelstrom word. And is like, what is that? And so he sketches out the symbol for it, and he's like, oh yeah, that's on the far side of the island. And because they're fishermen, he just causes a whole bunch of fish to jump in their nets as thanks. So he makes his way out, and they find the symbol in the ground, surrounded by these big stone golem creatures that are all seemingly statues. And as he's looking at it, he's like, awesome, portal's dead center in the middle, let me just pry it open with the trident. So he stabs the trident into it. All of a sudden the golems start waking up. They got lava powers, and Mara's the first one to notice, like, oh god, look around you, Arthur. And they start screaming out, gate is forbidden, do not pass. So Arthur loses his trident to one of them. He starts using super strength to bash them apart, but they're lava creatures, so they can just reform with magma and whatnot. One of them blasts Aquaman across the battlefield with a rocket-propelled fist. The other one tries to slam him with, into the ground. And Mara is the one who's like, okay, you guys are made of lava, check this out. She pulls up, like, the entirety of the ocean into a wave, starts drowning all of them, just being like, yep, you guys got nothing on me. But as they start coming to, they immediately start heating up again. And Mara's like, what? I just dropped an ocean on them. It's like, yeah, but they're like forces of nature. They're not going to be able to be stopped that much. We need to just be able to get past them. So he looks over, sees the one with his trident, says, Mara, take that one out. I'll grab the trident. We'll just jump in quick. So they make the plan happen. He grabs the trident. He activates the portal. When all of a sudden, all of them stop. Nobody starts moving again. The portal opens up, and it's like, well, the gate's open. I thought it would be right here. And she's like, I feel it's like when I pass through the barrier of Zebel. Something's different. And they look over the edge of the cliff that they're next to, and they see out in the sea is where the portal actually is open. And it's a whirlpool. It's a maelstrom. So they hold hands, they jump into it, and as they come out the other side, they're in the exact same place, but things are slightly different. The volcano that was previously on the island was dormant. This one is active. There is now a new group of people there who are freaking out, saying like, oh god, the maelstrom's open. It's without the queen's order. The royals, they've got the royal crest. Oh god, they're here for you, my queen. And in comes, riding this huge-ass hog beast, says, fear not, my faithful, I knew this day would come. The world is not for the rulers of Atlantis to enter. It bows for me and me alone. So commands Queen Atlanta. So Aquaman's mom is alive. She seems to be a warlord. And she's riding a giant war hog. It's badass. There's a panel on the side of a van. Beyond that, it's a fast-paced issue. The intro really pissed me off with the whole, like, oh, we're just dumping Grodd and then bailing out. Like, that was a cliffhanger for the sake of a cliffhanger. Don't do that. All this other stuff here, it was fine. It feels like we were just kind of propelling ourselves to the end. The one thing I did congratulate the series on is, okay, we've got a whole bunch of psychic people. We had a Martian Manhunter issue, then we had a Grodd issue. I thought that was going to play into it more. Doesn't seem like it. Seems like that just happened to be happenstance of, oh, we're exploring the DC universe, but it just happened to be two psychic people back to back. Maybe we'll get more out of it. It just seems like they threw it away in this issue. So yeah, just a little bit of a low point, but the end reveal is certainly a major status quo shift, if it's true, so I'm curious to see where that goes. I will go ahead and put this at a 7. It just feels like a 7 to me. I was thinking maybe a little bit lower. I was thinking maybe 6.5, but nah, it at least deserves a 7 just because it is a decently well done issue. I think pacing wise it has some issues, but everything else it kind of flourishes at. So good for it. 7. The Flash number 38, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth. So, last issue, we had the introduction of a quote-unquote new villain, I think, who just really hates that people are on their cell phones a lot. Flash is trying to find a way out of the Speed Force, and then future Flash is living normal Flash's life, and gave a lead to Iris that resulted in a whole bunch of bodies being uncovered from Forever Evil. So, future Flash is working with Patty of, okay, let's go through these bodies, let's start processing. And she's like, this is going to take forever. And he's like, nah, we'll be done before dinner. So he starts super speeding through the bodies, and he's like, oh, this one had to have been Deathstorm, this one Typhoon, this one Hyena. And he starts working his way through, and eventually he finds one that is given like small electrical scarring, a little small scale explosive, and he's like, this is it. This is Overload's first kill. And Patty's like, what the hell's an Overload? And all of a sudden, in walks Iris West. And she's like, hey, Barry, sorry that you had to do this job. And Patty's like, hey, sorry that you had to publish that story that made us have to do this job. And she's like, oh, well, I'm trying to write a follow-up story. You know, it's a slow news day. And Barry just turns around like, these are dead people, Iris. They all had lives and families, and now they're dead. Can you show a little respect, damn you? And Iris is like, what? And all of a sudden her police scanner goes off saying that Mirror Master is spotted doing financial crimes. And she's like, Barry, I'd love to be chewed out by you, but rogue stuff is usually above the fold story, so I gotta go. And he's like, yeah, you better go. Maybe there'll be a body count if you're lucky. So we go back in the Speed Force where Flash and them are celebrating a job well done of fighting off all those beasts that attack them. And he's getting his suit sewn up by one of the women there. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're doing a great job. It's fantastic. She's like, oh, well, the fabric's amazing. I'm just super cool suit, man. And he's talking to Selkirk, the guy who is the leader around here, and just like, dude, you talk like you've seen all this stuff before. What's up? And he's like, oh, well, here, let me give you my origin story, because it turns out I wasn't just sucked into the Speed Force. I went searching for it. And he pulls out his journal, which has all these notes on the Speed Force, and he's like, yeah, I was interested in this idea of speedsters. All these different cultures have stories about men who ran faster than anybody else, inhuman speeds, and I kept on getting this symbol of lightning over and over and over again. And people laughed me out of the room. They said I was stupid, but like, I went and I lived in these tribes. I learned their cultures. I found out more about them. And eventually I found in America there was a guy who said that there was a crazy ass thing happening out on the Utah salt flats. So I went out there, and wouldn't you know it, an untempered schism into the Speed Force, and I got too close and I got sucked in. And because I had some expertise of this place, people made me the leader, and I have been ever since. And Flash is like, wow, okay, and that's what makes you think I can get my powers back in this place? And he's like, probably, yes, I think so. So if you want to do it, let's go. So he's like, yep, all right, Bill, say your goodbyes, because you're not going to be coming back here. So Flash says goodbye to a bunch of people. There are some twins from the 22nd century who got sucked in named Taylor and Johnny. They're apparently going to be survivalists that help him out on his trek. And the 4 of them, including Selkirk, make their way out. So we then go back to Central City, where Mirror Master, the Rogues lost Heatwave. During Forever Evil, he exploded. He died. So they've apparently been testing out a couple other pyro-based ones, and now they've come across a guy named Napalm. And Napalm is straight up about to murder people. He is very violent with his fire powers. And Mirror Master's like, hey man, rogues don't kill people. That's rule number 1 in the handbook. And he's like, there's a handbook? It's like, yes, there's look, all right, we're doing a bank robbery. That's the whole reason we're here. So he goes over to the vault, he gets out the money. Meanwhile, Napalm literally just starts burning the money as it gets to them. And he's like, that's the whole reason we're here, man. You're not good at this. And Future Flash comes in and is just like, I agree. Neither of you are, though. So Mirror Master's ready to aim at Flash. Flash is like, hey, I thought you went hero after Forever Evil. You did a good thing. And he's like, yeah, well, doing good things doesn't pay the bills. I got to get what's owed to me here. And then Napalm comes in and is like, I'm going to burn the Flash. And he shoots him with fire. Then just starts blasting around random people in the group. He's about to hit 2 random civilians, to which Mirror Master's like, all right, that's enough. And he puts some mirrors in front of civilians to absorb the blast. And he's like, you're out of the rogues. Tryout failed. And so Flash is like, oh, you may have saved those guys, but you're not off the hook yet. And Mirror Master just punches through a mirror, manages to land a hit on Flash. And he's like, all right, whatever, we're out of here. So he opens up a mirror portal, steps through it, dragging Napalm along with him. But Future Flash is like, not so fast. I got a few extra tricks. And as Napalm's arm is halfway through the mirror, Barry shatters it. And in shattering it, his arm gets cut off. And immediately Mirror Master's like, whoa, man, you're the Flash. You wouldn't do this sort of stuff. And Flash comes up like, what are you talking about? See, Napalm here was just about ready to kill some civilians. If I don't take care of him now, who knows what he's going to do later. And so Barry picks up one of the mirror shards and is about to stab it through Napalm's head when all of a sudden Iris is at the scene. And she's like, Flash? And a bunch of guards come up and they're like, let him go, Flash. And he's forced to be like, all right, fine, whatever, you can have him. And he runs off. And Iris gets on the phone with her editor being like, hey, man, forget the rogues robbery thing. Flash just nearly killed a guy. So we go over to the police precinct where Patty's looking at some evidence from the guy who was killed by Future Flash without knowing that. And she's like, that's weird. There's this nanite, like, carbon fiber in this, but, like, it's super futuristic. What was it doing in this guy's place? And all of a sudden, one of her coworkers comes in, Forrest, and is just like, hey, we got blood splatter down at the robbery. And she's like, oh no, someone gets shot? And he's like, no, Flash chopped the dude's arm off. It's crazy. It's insane. And she's like, what? No, Flash wouldn't do that. That's impossible. And it's like, yeah, well, we got eyewitnesses. It definitely happened. And then Patty turns around as Barry comes in the room and she's like, oh, hey, Barry. And she's like, oh, what's going on? Hey, what are you looking at in that evidence thing right there? And she's like, nothing. Just evidence for a killer. And it's very clear that Patty is now suspicious of Barry because the Flash tried to kill somebody. So I don't feel like there was any forward movement. You know, like, don't get me wrong, the forward Flash, like the Future Flash of Patty now suspecting him, that's something. That's at least a little bit of something. But, like, this is just exactly the same issue as the last issue. Like, nothing really changed or moved forward. Everything feels like it happened there. This is more of exposition for that Selkirk guy than anything else. So, kind of a useless issue, all things considered. Just a little bit of, now people know that Future Flash may not be on the up and up, but that's like the last 4 pages. The rest of this was very much things we've already established, already done, and kind of just feels a little useless. So, all in all, I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one like a 6.5. Just, I don't know, not really doing much for me, and I feel like this Future Flash thing has already kind of worn out its welcome. I want it to just get to the point where other Barry shows up, clears his name, and gets it done with. But I'm sure we won't get that quite yet. So, yeah, 6.5. Star-Spangled War Stories featuring G.I. Zombie number 6, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Scott Hampton. So, last issue we ended with Jared, our G.I. Zombie, seemingly being killed as far as the terrorist group thinks, but he's actually using it as an attempt to break into their facility because they're going to try to burn his body. We pick up this issue in Ecuador, where a scientist is trying to talk to this guy named Leo, and he's just working on some stuff. And as he gets the call, he steps out, gets out of his hazmat suit. He's talking to someone named Becky, and he answers the call from Forrest. And he's apparently like the main guy in charge. And Forrest is like, hey, just wanted to let you know, or I wanted to know where the shipment is, where that's going on. And also, by the way, we kind of had a little mishap with our current stock. And he's like, what do you mean mishap? And it's like, well, the feds raided Duke's place. He had to launch the missile. It was supposed to go to D.C., ended up in Tennessee. It's a whole skedaddle, but like I'm on top of it. And he's like, well, you better be on top of it. Jesus Christ. Look, get your house in order. Your shipment's on the way. But if I have to hear about this again, like, your ass is on the line, man. Got it? And he's like, yeah, yo, absolutely. So we then cut over to Carmen, who is under the name Tiffany, and she's doing a little bit of skinny dipping in this massive pool that this underground facility has. And as she gets out of the water, sitting there is whatever his name is, the other guy, Forrest. And he's like, hey, so you enjoying the place here? And she's like, that's extremely creepy of you coming and watching me as I'm naked, but, you know, whatever. And he's just like, oh, well, you know, you impressed me or something like that. And it's like, okay, well, you know, I want to go back to the fact that you talked to me about overthrowing the government, but you're still not giving me the full details. And he's like, oh, all things in time. It's all right. And he's like, well, the reason I came here is I wanted to know what you think of the proposition I offered you before. And she's like, I already told you I'm in. Like, just tell me where to sign. I'm straight up good. Like, just tell me what's up. And he's just like, yeah, I know, you're right. But, like, I'm still a little bit reluctant. I just, you know, your background check came up clean, but it pays me to be safe. And she's like, well, hey, if you want any more exposure of me, you literally had it all just there. So maybe we can continue this conversation in the morning. And he's like, are you propositioning me? And she's like, no, not really. I'm a little bit tired, so don't want to underwhelm you. And he's like, fair enough, good night. So she starts sneaking around the facility after he leaves. She's just trying to find a phone just to say like, hey, I'm here. I'm at this place. Come get me out. Jesus Christ. But she's caught up by Kat, who is also looking around the place, and Kat's like, hey, what are you doing? She's like, midnight snack? And she's like, yeah, same here, let's go. So they make their way out to the kitchen, and she's like, oh, how do you know your place around here so well? And Kat's like, I did my training here, but I'm not allowed to talk to you about that. And she's like, right, yeah, exposure, got it. So we see that the woman who shot Jared last issue brings the van with the other two guys in the back and just like, all right, send them to the incinerator. I'm going to bed. So we see a couple of guys unload the stuff, and they're talking about like, yeah, these guys got shot because they wanted out after they were told that their family was not allowed to join them post D-Day, pretty much. So this is something that they're going to be having to do a lot more of when people realize their families aren't going to be saved. And as they're throwing in the bodies, Jared sits up out of his body bag, pushes one of the guys into the incinerator, to which point it's just his front half, so he gets out, he's running around on fire. Sprinklers start going off. The second guy manages to tackle Jared to the ground, wrestles a knife out of his hand, and Jared goes over, grabs the knife, and manages to cut the guy's leg and then stab him in the throat. So they're both dead. We see the girl comes back, and she's just like, all right, kill the sprinklers. Or sorry, some other girl, Eileen. And saying the other people are like, hey, there's a lot of blood on the floor and we don't see their bodies. And one of the guys is like, hey, where the hell did Francis go? He's just disappearing. The other guy's like, I can't find my gun or my radio. And then he gets yoinked out of nowhere. And Eileen's like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on here? And Al calls Jared. He's got the gun. He's like, all right, I need you to tell me some information about this place because I know it's not a regular spa. And she's like, I'm not going to tell you nothing. And he's like, look into my eyes. Take a look at me, like, real up close. And she's like, oh, Jesus Christ, are you a zombie? And he's like, yes, thank you. I know that's how I look. Anyway, tell me the information that you have. Tell me what like, I get that you're loyal here, but, like, I need to know what your actual cause here is because I'm loyal to my cause as well. So she punches him in the face, trying to, like, push his nose into his brain, and she's like, it says, you know, that doesn't actually work, right? Like, it's physically impossible. So then she kicks him in the nuts, boxes his ears, takes the knife, and, like, slits him across the throat. And he's like, wow, that was a lot. And then he just headbutts her and, like, knocks her down to the ground. And as he's like, all right, you ready to play ball? She says, go to hell, spits in his face, and then he just punches her, and it knocks her out. And he's like, damn, didn't mean to knock her out. Oh, well. So he searches her clothes, tries to find anything, doesn't have anything on her, so he starts investigating a bit more. And as he follows some people down a hall, he hears them talking, saying how, oh yeah, you know, a lot of big work days coming up soon. He fumbles around for a light switch, and when he turns it on, he comes across the armory, which is just hundreds upon hundreds of stolen guns, all ready for war. And he's like, all right, I need to contact upstairs ASAP. So he gets a few guns out. He's ready to go. And he's like, I gotta get Carmen. We gotta get in contact with Gravedigger, but I need someone I can question to get more information. So he finds a men's room. There's a guy who's taking a piss in there, and he's like, all right, do what I say or else I'm gonna shoot you. So he gets the guy down on his knees, and he's like, all right, tell me where the information, where's the monitoring station at? And he's like, I ain't telling you nothing. He gets shot in the kneecap, and Jarrett's like, scream or try to lie to me, and I'm going to blow your brains out. Got it? And monitoring station. He's like, oh, right above us, one floor above. And he's like, great, thank you. And then the guy just passes out, and he's like, oh, Jesus. Passes out after one gunshot? That's pathetic. So he makes his way into the monitoring station, knocks out one of the guards, and as he starts clicking through the video feeds, he notices the back of his own head. And he's like, ah, crap. Someone's monitoring the monitoring station. And so we see this other woman get the call, bunch of alarm lights going off, and as he makes his way down is apparently Forrest's sister, saying like, okay, we got a few people missing, like we don't know where they're at. Video guys scrubbing through trying to get a good look at him. He pull up Jared's face, and immediately Forrest is like, crap, all right, we gotta go. Libby, you're with me. Everyone else gets scrambled. Try to find this guy. Kill him if you can. And Forrest explains, look, that guy that you thought you killed, because Libby was the girl that she thought she killed Jared, he works for the government, and they take down guys specifically like our group. And so if they're here, we have already been blown. We need to scramble and get this place scrubbed. And she's like, what? What about everybody else? What are we going to do about them? And it's like, they know the drill, and if we lose this place, everything else goes up. So we got to do this now. So they head to this secret room. They both put their hands on a panel. They initiate a self-destruct sequence, and they are going to nuke this place off the map. So they got 15 minutes and counting. It doesn't seem like anyone else can hear about it, but Kat gets a call and talks to Tiffany, and Tiffany's like, or Tiffany, Carmen, is like, all right, well, we got a flight to catch. Let's go. Ooh, all right. I like it. It's got a bunch of spy stuff going on. They have a consistently enjoyable voice for all of the characters. Like, everyone feels different enough that I'm able to pick up on who it is just by like who's talking, but at the same time they feel all very, I don't want to say like jovial, but like Jared, you can tell he's been through it all. You can tell that like nothing really scares him, so he is just kind of an ass out on the battlefield, but like it works for him. It really makes it a good character. So overall, I'm down for it. I think it's a very fun book, definitely a sleeper hit. So I'm going to give this one a 7.5, and we'll continue on with the last two issues. Infinity Man and the Forever People number 7, written by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, art by Daniel HDR. So last issue was a tie-in, strangely enough, to the Godhead event of Green Lantern, and it basically ended with Big Bear saying, hey, we gotta go kill Highfather. That does not apply here. This issue honestly feels like the writers realized, oh crap, right, we've only got like 3 more issues. We need to wrap this up now. So we open up this issue. It's post New Year's Eve. We see Mark Moonrider is just sitting out at the ocean. And he's like, man, I thought New Genesis sucked, but this place, I have no idea where I belong here. And as he's sitting there staring out at the ocean, in walks Serafina from the ocean. And she just sits next to him. And he's like, hey, funny meeting you here. You want to talk about it? And she's just drenched. And she's like, you know, it started with all the best intentions. And we're reminded of like 4 issues ago, when Serafina gave a dude who was being bullied because people were pissing in his pool, gave him water control powers, and somebody just offhandedly mentioned saying, oh, by the way, he's a dangerous psychopath. And she's like, oops. So Turns out she felt bad that that happened and felt that she had to go fix that. So she goes to his house, knocks on the door, and all of a sudden the door opens up with a flood of water. And the guy's name is Dr. Scuba, and he answers the door just being like, oh, hey, it's the lady from the apartment complex. Would you like to talk about water some more? And she's like, no. How are you feeling? And he's like, I feel great. I've been talking to water for ages, but it's finally talking back to me. Also, check this out. And the two bullies that were pissing in his pool come out in water like cocoons, clearly drowned to death, and just like, check it out, they defiled the water, so I had the water defile them. And Serafina's like, oh my god, you killed them. And he's like, what? No, I cleansed them. Wait a minute, you don't like the water either. Do you know how many times I had to filter the pool to get rid of their stench? Water doesn't like to be filtered. You're one of them against liquid, aren't you? You've upset the water. So all of a sudden, he's able to summon this giant-ass tidal wave from the ocean behind them, and it swoops in and just floods the entire street they're on. And he's like, yeah, well, or she's explaining to Mark, like, yeah, it turns out that enhancement I gave him was a cosmic cartridge. It would give him limited control over water, but it turns out it wasn't that limited. So as he is flooding this street with water, he's fighting against Serafina, just being like, how dare you question our relationship? No one has cared for water more than I. I stayed up so many nights boiling out bacteria. I've been good to the water, and now it's been good to me. And he's like stopping just short of saying that the water sucks him off. So at this point, he brings Serafina underwater, and she says, I didn't give him the ability to breathe underwater. He still needs normal air. So he makes a bubble around the both of them so that he can show her like all the stuff of the water. And then she manages to get a grip on his back, unplug the cartridge from him. He loses control of it, and so he seemingly just drowns. And so she now has to swim back from the ocean, and it took her quite some time, which is why she's just now getting to Mark in the middle of New Year's Eve. She's like, anyway, how was your day? And he's like, it was drier, not much better. And it turns out that they went back to a hotel because their apartment's under construction, and they figured out that it was New Year's Eve, so they were saying like, oh, let's have a party, let's do all this stuff. And Big Bear thinks that it's something about how there's like a time wave that sweeps around the planet and it affects all of the people of Earth, but as new gods, they'll be immune to it. But they have to wear these decorative hats that say Happy New Year's Eve. Dreamer is trying to get cozy with Mark, saying like, oh, hey, put on a hat, wear it. And she's like, oh, I'm not really in the mood. And just like, oh, well, I think the person underneath the hat looks pretty good. So they're counting down the clock, and it's like, all right, it's already hit the eastern coast like 3 hours ago. It'll hit here any second. And everyone's like, I don't feel any temporal wave. And it's like, that's because we're immune. And then they count it down. Happy New Year, 2015. They see a bunch of people kissing on TV. So whatever the hell their name is, I cannot remember. I think it was Viking. Viking and his girlfriend, they make out for a second, and Dreamer's like, hey, Mark, I'm up for that custom. And he's like, not right now. I can't. I got to go get some air. And so he goes out to the beach to mope a little bit. And Serafina's like, dude, a hot chick wanted to make out with you. What is wrong with you? Why did you not want to start the new year that way? And she's like, I don't know. I know Dreamer my whole life. I don't think that it can be that, we can't be more than friends. And he's just talking in general, like depression terms, like part of me is broken. I'm second guessing myself. I have anxiety. And Serafina comes in and just gives him a kiss and says like, we're all a little broken, but at least we found each other. So she walks off and Mark's like, oh, hey, like that could work. I like that. So as she's walking off, we see another woman comes up saying like, oh, you're quite the ladies' man. I was wondering what it would take to get your attention. And she's like, who's that, Dreamer? And as he turns around, it's like, no, not Dreamer. I'm Sweet Leilani. And she's like, what? He's like, I was your neighbor back at the apartment. Did you straight up forget me? Shame. I liked you enough to possibly save you. And he's like, what? Save me from what? And it's like, oh, well, I have to figure out where to ship your bones. Maybe you'd like your ashes scattered on New Genesis? And he's like, wait a minute, how do you know all this? What's going on? And so she skates away. He gives chase down an alleyway and just like, who are you? How do you know New Genesis? Did High Father send you? It's like, whoa, you're barking up the wrong tree there. You said yourself, he represents everything wrong with New Genesis. And he's like, oh, you're spying on me too? What's going on? And as he shakes Leilani a little bit and just like, look, I'm with Lord Agog, and it's like, that leader of the cult, what does he want with me? And it's like, hey, he doesn't want anything with you. He wants Dreamer. It's like, over my dead body. It's like, fine. So then all of a sudden, down this alleyway, there was a bunch of murals of what are clearly Furies of Apocalypse. They all come jumping out of the wall. Thumpa, Killsandra, and Enchanthrax, whereas Sweet Leilani turns out to also be named Sweet Leilani, but she's got a whip now. So they're the femme fatales. And Mark's just like, save yourself the trouble. Tell Agog he's wasting his time. So they start attacking Mark. They start going at it. They knock him down. Pretty much he manages to get a handle on everything, but he's distracted long enough for Enchantrix to sneak up behind him and paralyze him. And they say, oh, she could kill you. That's within her power set, but she's choosing not to. So you bring us Dreamer as Lord Agog wishes, or else Enchantrix will straight up murderize your ass. And that's the issue. Look, okay, first step. Nothing against the previous artist of this book. This art was so much easier to look at. Like, I cannot, night and day, like, so different, so much better. On top of that, I actually like feel like they're doing something here. All of those previous issues, it just felt like, yeah, keep throwing stuff at the wall, see if it sticks. And then they have to realize, like, oh, wait, we actually have to pick up all that stuff that didn't stick. We can't just throw it in there and then not come back to it. So they're like, okay, this guy who could control water, he was killed. The whole thing where they were talking about killing Highfather, that's just on the back burner for a while, but they're still pissed off at him. The thing with Sweet Leilani, we're dealing with that. Like, everything is just slowly being put back into the toy chest, and I am so grateful for it. That being said, still a stupid book. So overall, 6, I was about to say 0.5, 6. Flat 6. And most of that is the art and the fact that they're actually putting stuff away. I would not say it's a good book, but it's 6 just because it's so much better than the other stuff that we've been encountering in this. So, yay. Justice League Dark number 38, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Andre Guinaldo. So the last couple issues have been all of the different parts of the team broken up over different time periods. Zatanna stuck at the beginning of time. Group B is stuck at the end of everything. And then Group C is stuck with now, but not like now, but just a continuing moment of now. So we end up with Group B, which is Frankenstein, Nightmare Nurse, Andrew Bennett, and Swamp Thing, as they're just sailing through the infinite void of nothing. Nightmare Nurse has made them a ship in order to sail through it, hoping that they'll find something on the other side. And the sails of this boat start fading away. They're losing their substance because she's losing her concentration on the spell. When all of a sudden Swamp Thing sits up like, wait a minute, do you feel that? It's something crazy. It's like the green, but a billion times more. And everyone else is like, I feel a little something, but not nearly anything that strong. And all of a sudden, at the port side of the ship, there are all these green swirling like flame lights or something. And Swamp Thing just goes, my God. And they realize, well, this is something. This is what we got to deal with. And Andrew Bennett's just like, what the hell is that? And it's like, whatever it is, we got to go there. It's here to help us. And Frankenstein's like, we don't know that. And it's like, yes, I do. Please jump into it. So these vines reach out, grab hold of each of the 4 members as the ship fades away, and it brings them to somewhere. All of a sudden, all the lights go out and they're left in darkness, but they are still carried by these vines. Then we go to the Kingdom of Now with Group B, or C, which is Xanadu, Black Orchid, and Deadman. They triggered something of this giant black wave of a void that comes in and just wipes away everything, and it has eyes for some reason. And Deadman's like, okay, it can't hurt me, but like the rest of you need to find shelter. And they're all just like, there's no time. It's coming. That thing's going to engulf the Citadel. And Xanadu casts a spell to be able to stop it, but ultimately it's not going to do anything. And then all of a sudden, the tree in the garden that they were in reaches out, the roots come up and grab hold of Group C. One of the members of this world that they were fighting alongside with immediately gets engulfed by this black void wave, and they seemingly escape. And then we go to the beginning of time where Zatanna has merged herself into the root of magic in this world, which happens to be a world tree, and she's losing herself to the tree. It starts just engulfing her entirely. We see inside of the tree's mind is Zatanna talking to the consciousness of the tree. And she's like, oh, yes, I am a form that you can understand, blah, blah, blah. And Zatanna's like, what do you want with me? She's like, you came looking for me. I'm just trying to understand you. I'm not trying to consume you. And I want to understand what's going on. And she's like, oh, I see. You feel the disruption in time as well. And Zatanna's like, yes. How do we fix it? And she's like, well, it won't be easy. And we see this tree spirit stabs a root into Zatanna's chest, causing this massive, intense pain. But then all of a sudden, she blinks up, wakes up, and standing over her is Nightmare Nurse and the rest of the Justice League Dark. They're all there. And he's like, hey, Zatanna, we made it. We have no idea how, but it happened. And Zatanna's like, no, this is an illusion. I've been through this before. Get out of here. And she casts a spell to like wisp them all away, but they don't disappear. And she's like, sorry to disappoint, but we're still here. And she's like, what? She really found you? She did it? And it's like, it's like, yeah, the world tree. It doesn't matter. Like, I've been here for like so many years. And the other people are like, what do you mean so many? Like, it was like maybe an afternoon for us. It wasn't that long at all. And it's like, things flow different here. We're at the beginning of time. It's like 10,000 years have passed for me. It's so long. And a voice calls out saying, not long enough, love. And we see that is an elderly Constantine along with what is clearly supposed to be their 2 children. And he's just like, why don't you come on back? We can be a family. We can live together here forever. And she's like, you're not real. Get out of here. And scats him away. And Frankenstein's like, what was that? And he's like, it's my fantasy of Constantine and settling down and having a life with him. It's been haunting me the whole time I've been here. It sucks. And just like, what? But how? And it's like, magic is super strong here. Everything you could ever want comes true. And they're all like, that sounds awesome, though. And she's like, is it? Is it? Okay. Andrew Bennett, here's your girlfriend back after she died. Frankenstein, you're a real boy now. Madame Xanadu, you're allowed to die. All of you get whatever you want. And none of it's real. It just drives you crazy after a while. And Black Orchid comes in. She's apparently not affected. Just punches Zatanna in the face, being like, hey, we've all lost stuff. We've all been at different parts of time. We've seen worlds ending and died. You aren't special, Missy. Got it? And she's like, sorry. It's been a lot. I've lost a lot. So eventually the tree speaks, just being like, hey, kind of need y'all to focus up. Time is still in crisis. And Swamp Thing steps up being like, oh my God, it's you. Oh my God, you're like the root of the green. And she's like, I'm the root of a lot of things. But yes, the green is one of them. Anyway, don't worship me. Just help me out here. You need to save the planet. And it's like, that's what we're trying to do. Just tell us what's up. And she disappears back in the tree again. And Swamp Thing's like, don't worry. She's planning something. And all of a bunch of seed pods come out of the tree. They bury themselves. And out from the ground explodes a brand new House of Mystery. Just straight up here. And they're like, is this like a new House of Mystery, or is this like how the House of Mystery was originally born? Because we are at the beginning of time. It could be either. So it's Zatanna's house. It's synced to her, so they all walk into it. And Zatanna's like, oh, woe is me. Constantine does not remember our love, but I'm doomed to remember it forever. Anyway, back into the House of Mystery. So they fly off. And Xanadu starts talking to Nightmare Nurse like, hey, Zatanna's kind of a little bit crazy right now, and if the house is linked to her, I don't trust the house. And Zatanna's like, is that a threat? You want to go? You want to do it? You want what's up right now? And Boston Deadman's just like, I think we got more important things to worry about right now. And they look out the window, and all of a sudden they are in the heart of Kronos, which is apparently the source of all time for all universes. And there's little, as she calls them, time gremlins eating away at time, causing holes in it. So they see the house, they start attacking it, they start tearing it apart. They're like, what do we do, Zatanna? It's your house. What do we do? And Zatanna's like, leave him to me. And she busts out, and apparently because she spent so long at the beginning of time collecting all of that magic, she's now uber powerful, and she's like, may as well bleed it all off at once. And so she casts this massive magical spell that attacks all of the time gremlins and knocks them all out. And Yeah, it seems like it works. However, as they're looking around, they say that, oh, I've realized I failed. Time erupts all around us and begins to collapse. Creation screams, I guess I won't be dying alone, says Zatanna. So, all right. It's okay. I don't know. I liked each of the component stories so much more than I liked them being combined. Like, the last 3 issues have been great. They have really done a lot of internal, like, looking into these characters and figuring out what works for them, and it's been really, really good. This one, though, it just kind of feels like, I don't know, they were told they got to wrap it up real quick. And while I like the House of Mystery being born here, that's an interesting thought. The idea that, like, the source of all life is this tree, that's kind of interesting in a way. It just feels so rushed past. It feels like, okay, yeah, we did that, but, like, we got to be done in 2 issues now. So, yeah, I don't know. It just feels a little bit rushed to me. Overall, I'd probably still give it a 7. I think it's still a decent quality. It's just very fast-paced and could use a little bit more introspection like the last 3 issues have had, but that's just my opinion of it, at least. Batman Eternal number 43, written by Snyder, Tanya, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by David LaFuente. So this issue picks up around 3 a.m. in the Narrows, and Batman is talking to Bluebird, basically saying, hey, look, she has no connection for you. Nobody's going to be looking for her here. And it's pretty clear very quickly that they are talking about Stephanie Brown, spoiler. So Bluebird's like, look, I will go ahead and take care of this, but I want you to give me some proper training. Show me how to, like, kick somebody so hard their eyeballs pop out. And Batman's like, seriously? And she's like, I mean, not literally, but yes, something like that. And he's like, look, just keep her safe, find out what she knows, and I'll think about it. So we see inside of her apartment, Cullen is there, and as is Stephanie. And Cullen's like, hey, do you want some tea? And she's like, what flavor you got? It's like, tea? It's like, no, thank you. So she's like, yeah, I've been through a lot the past few months. And he's like, yeah, so have I. I've been controlled by a nanobot swarm. And she's like, oh, I didn't realize. And that's where Harper steps in, being like, yeah, a bunch of people have been through a bunch of stuff over this past few months. You're not the only one with the sob story, so why don't you just spill everything you know? And she's like, I didn't claim to be the only one with the sob story, so maybe just ease up. And she's saying, like, yeah, well, hey, we saved your life. And she's like, oh, is that what you did? And she's saying, look, I think it would be weird that you actually want to associate with that maniac. And she's like, well, you talking about Batman? You got bad things to say about Batman? That's where Cullen steps in, just be like, hey, girls, let's be friends. Let's everything be cool. And Stephanie's just like, oh, I see you all drank the Kool-Aid for Batman. I get it. What he turned this city into. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Would you rather we allow you to stay with her? Is that what you wanted? What are you hiding? And so we cut back to 6 hours ago, where Stephanie is being awoken by Catwoman, and she's at the Egyptian casino, and Catwoman's like, so, how's it going? What's going on? And Stephanie's just like, who are you? And she's like, oh, well, this is my place as the Egyptian. And here's the thing. It's a casino. I make millions of dollars off of any of these people that come in, but you are worth more than any of them because you have a $200 million bounty on your head. And the only reason that you would possibly have that big of a price on your head is if you know something that you're not supposed to know. I've got plans of my own. I can't afford you to be in the mix, so you're going to tell me everything that you know. And Stephanie puts together, like, wait a minute, you're Catwoman, aren't you? Why would I tell you anything? It's just like, oh, because I'm curious, curiosity in the cat and all that. Also, if you don't, I'm going to hand you over to people who want to kill you right here and now. Oh, would you like some wine? So we then cut over to the Narrows around the same time, and Harper just keeps on hugging on Cullen, just like, oh, I'm so glad you're safe, everything's fine. And he's like, yeah, it's great, awesome, but, like, can I just, like, try to make up for lost time here? And he's at this import shop, and he's kind of talking to Harper about how she's become her superhero in her own right. And she's like, hush, secret identity, all that stuff. And into this little anime shop walks Tim Drake, who's like, so, hey, we need to talk. So they go back to Harper's apartment, and he's like, look, have you heard of the blog Spoiler Alert? And she goes like, no, not really. I've heard some people talking about it. And it's like, it's run by a girl named Stephanie Brown. She's got a bounty on her head that we can't trace. It was $100 million today. It'll be $200 million by the end of the night. And her dad was Cluemaster, a little no-name villain that never caused any major problems. We don't know what's so important about her. We don't know what's up, but she's being held at one of the most secure places in Gotham right now, and we have to go get her. And Harper's like, okay, how do I fit into this? And it's like, well, she's being held by Catwoman. Batman's kind of got a thing with Catwoman, and Catwoman is able to misdirect him. So we need somebody who's not really involved with the family in order to get into it. And that's where you come in. And she's like, where's Batman? And Red Ron's like, what? Where's Batman? Why isn't he the one telling me this? And she's like, God damn it. He still doesn't trust me. He still doesn't want me around. Was this even his idea? Tell me honestly, like, what am I supposed to be wearing? Is this a superhero gear thing? And he's like, no, Batman was very clear. No superhero gear. You do not do that. And she's like, yeah, let's see him stop me. So we then cut a little bit later. People have come into the casino. They start milling about. Catwoman's still talking to Stephanie, just being like, oh, you know, I've been stealing for people since I was younger than your age, and I like playing with my food. I like a little bit of a game. And she's like, oh, you're playing with me? And she's like, yes, exactly that. So here's what I've managed to figure out about you, just looking at you and all the things you've done. You could have, with the information you have, gone to the police. And Stephanie comes in like, no, I couldn't. The police are all corrupt. And it's like, fine, not the police, but like the FBI, the CIA, Argus, all of them. You could have gone with this information, but you didn't. And you proved that when you went out of state lines to go get your dad arrested. Like, you know that you could have done this, but instead you decided to play your dad's game. You decided to take all of these little hints and clues and string them about on your blog. I think that you are actually much more of a daddy's girl than you want to care to admit. Whatever it is he did to you, you don't want to turn him in. You want to prove something to him. That's the whole reason you're doing this. And Stephanie just sits quietly, and Catwoman's like, and not only that, you've run into Batman several times. If you wanted to get this all done, you would have talked to Batman, but you haven't said a word. Why are you afraid of Batman? And Stephanie gets all solid locked up, and someone comes in telling Catwoman, hey, someone tried to get in with an old code, and she's like, that's one of the Bat family. Let her in. Let's see what's going on there. But first, we're going to put Stephanie in the vault to make sure that he can't get to you until I want him to get to you. And as she's taken away, we get the entirety of the issue of Batman number 28, which was the flash forward issue. That was a sneak peek. All that happens, and we see Batman is led by Catwoman to the vault where Stephanie's Brown is being held, and she's like, all right, well, it's up to her if she wants to go with you. And Steph is like, what? Huh? And she's like, yeah, you have one of two options. Option A, you go with the Bat family, you do whatever they say. Option 2, I throw you back out to the people who wanted the bounty on your head. And she's like, what? Can't I just stay here with you? And she's like, no, that's not an option. I don't want anything to do with you. You're going to go do that, all right? And she's like, you can't make me go. And Catwoman's like, what makes you think, out of everything you've seen, that I can't make you do anything I want you to do? So Batman steps up just being like, you'll be safe with us. I promise you'll be fine. It looks like you haven't slept or eaten. We'll make sure that you're safe. And Stephanie's like, you won't make me talk. I promise I'm not going to do it. And he's like, that's fine. But you've got assassins after you, and I need to make sure that you're safe, okay? So Stephanie's like, fine, okay, yeah, I'll go. So they go. We go back to Harper's apartment at modern time, and Harper's like, look, I don't want to fight again. Like, clearly you and I are not the type of people that are going to get along. You're a suburban, like, valley queen. I'm me. So why are you so scared? Why are you shaking so much? And she's just says, like, Catwoman saw right through me. Like, Catwoman, like, she read into everything. And yeah, I thought maybe if I was smart enough to play my dad's game on his level that I wouldn't be such a disappointment to him. And she just saw all of that immediately. And Harper's like, man, Catwoman's freaking cool. And Stephanie's like, I know, right? She's amazing. So they bond a little bit over that. And Harper's just like, look, even if we don't get along, like, you can trust me. My dad's been in Blackgate. I know the whole, douchebag father thing. Like, and Batman is a person you can trust. He's might be a little bit different and out there, but, like, you can trust him. And she's like, no, I can't. Because the person I saw talking to my dad, giving him orders all that time ago, the person behind all of this is the person who funds Batman. It's Bruce Wayne. And Harper's like, so, yeah. Clearly it isn't. It leads me to think it's Hush, right? Because, like, Hush can make himself look like Bruce. That was a whole thing. Right? Am I wrong on that? So, I don't know. It seems like a weird reveal considering they already have Hush in lockdown, but maybe there's someone else that can look like Bruce Wayne. What's Clayface been up to? Yeah, I don't know. It's a different art style. I think that it works for what this issue is, but it definitely is going to be a love it or hate it sort of aspect. And I think that plot-wise, I'm glad we finally got caught up with that sneak preview. It took 43 issues, but hey, we did it. Yeah, it's a fine enough issue. I'm happy to have it, and I'm going to give this one a flat 7. Future's End number 39, written by Azrael, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Stephen Thompson. So this issue picks up with Firestorm and Superman escorting Dr. Polaris around the Watchtower. And they're all saying it's a bad idea. Polaris is like, I can tear this place apart. You do realize that, right? And Firestorm's like, and I can shove you out into space. Let's not test these things. So Superman ends up stopping Firestorm, just like, this is crazy. Why is he here? And she's like, look, I got an idea. I want to run it by. I'm going to do it. And he's like, I don't even know you. Like, you're clearly a different Firestorm. And she's like, yeah, look, okay, I'm not the Firestorm you knew. My name is Madison Payne. Here's my whole backstory. And she lists off the stuff about her dad and then fusing with Jason Rush and all that. And Superman's like, wait a minute, hold on. I saved you from Rampage. Like, I remember you. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. I was there. And Polaris is like, hey, can I get to work? And they're like, shut up. So at that point, she's saying, look, I need him to redo whatever experimental stuff he needs to do in order to unfuse me and Jason because it's just not happening on our own. And in return, he gets the teleporter tech. And Superman's like, you're stupid. And she's like, I swear to God, I will turn your clothes into plastic wrap. And he's like, fine, whatever. But seriously, this is crazy. And she's like, look, his wife died because that tech was not publicly available. This is the right thing to do. We're going to let him have it. Okay. And she's like, all right, fine, whatever. So Polaris is like, all right, I'll go ahead and get started now. So they move off to do their thing. We then cut over to the hotel in Nevada where the rest of the group is hanging out, like the whole vault thing was on. And we see the two girls that are there with, I think his name was Henry. I don't know. Regardless, they see that they missed the whole thing, and they tell Henry to give them his phone so that way they can call up King Faraday. So they call up Faraday, and it's just like, yeah, 50 Sue teleported the vault up here. That's what caused the whole thing. She's gone now, though. And Faraday basically puts a hit out on Henry and is like, yeah, well, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're going to have to kill him. And Voodoo takes umbrage with that. She likes Henry. He's definitely saying, sorry, it's Justin, not Henry. This character is so forgettable. Justin is one of the group of them. And he's just like, well, should have thought that before you got him involved. And then all of a sudden the phone rings again. And they're like, he just disappeared. He's gone. We don't know where he is. And Faraday's like, well, seems like 50 Sue just abducted Justin. So hopefully he's going to be happy staying with that. And he says that you guys have got a capital P problem. And she's like, no, you have a problem. We're fine. It's like, no, my problem is the missing vault. Your problem is this girl that you attempted to kill is still alive and she has godlike powers and she'll be coming after you. So good luck with that one. And so he ends up leaving. We then cut over to a place called Paulie Pizza, which is just Chuck E. Cheese, but Paulie Pizza. And 50 Sue is trying to enjoy her time. And we see Justin is like, what the hell is going on? I need an explanation here. And Cole basically breaks it down like, me and Lana are like temporarily married. 50 Sue is our adopted daughter. And it seems that she has decided that you will be playing the part of her older brother from now on. And we see Justin was carrying some groceries earlier on. He just reaches into a the bag, pulls out a bottle of gin, starts chugging it down, and then offers it over to Cole and Lana. And they're like, yes, please, oh God. To which 50 Sue's like, hey, one drinking problem per family. So we cut over to Smallville, where Constantine's still telling Clark, like, hey, there are pockets of evil, Smallville's one of them, and everything sucks. And it kind of, like, Superman's kind of justifying, like, here's why I walked away. Like, I could do more good down on the ground than up in the sky, like, away from everyone else. It's just that sort of thing. And as they're having this discussion, we see Midge, Constantine's female friend, is being called by some voice into a cornfield, and she spreads open the corn and outrun a bunch of little itty-bitty looking brainiacs made out of corn that start attacking Superman and Constantine. And Superman's like, what is this? Is this Brainiac? And he's like, yeah, this is the sort of stuff I was telling you about. And Superman's like, oh, this is because of me? And it's like, yeah, this time it is because of you. And he blasts off all the things and he says, like, that doesn't even make sense. So Midge is kind of just dancing to the mental tune of Brainiac, and then all of a sudden a supersonic stalk of corn impales her through her stomach, and she is seemingly killed. Superman sets the cornfield on fire. Constantine says that'll only temporarily hold him off. Like, this is some primordial stuff here. It's a piece of the world that he wants. And Clark's like, Smallville, is that the piece? And Constantine's like, no. I can figure out the piece, though. Hey, Midge, wake up. And he, like, smacks her a little bit, like, this is your last chance. You got to tell us where Brainiac wants to go. Because she was just bonded with him. So she says, oh, the island. The Master's going to take Manhattan. So immediately Superman flies off. Constantine can hear it. And he's like, yeah, well, maybe he won't. And as Midge is like, I'm cold, John. And he's like, yeah, we're all cold. So then the last thing we get is over to Castle Frankenstein, where Frankenstein sees, the monster that is called Frankenstein, Frank, I'll call him, sees Victor Frankenstein, Victor, and he's like, that's impossible. How are you still alive? He's like, dude, that's my whole thing. I make dead things stay alive longer. That's what I do. And he's like, oh, this is abomination, Victor. He's like, yeah, why do you hate me so much? It's been centuries. You still hate me so much. He's just like, you are a monster, and I hate everything about you. He's like, fair enough. But, I've given you life. I am your father, regardless of whether you like it or not. And now you are back here at my mercy. And Amethyst is like, get your hands off him, bro. I don't like you. So all the pets start hissing at Amethyst. And it's like, oh, don't worry. She won't harm me. And she's like, why wouldn't I? It's like, oh, because you need me. I'm the only one who could possibly save him. See, Frank, I like you. You're cool. And, like, you are by far the best thing I ever made. But you're too damn annoying. I want you to be more docile. I want you to be more obedient. So here's the deal. If I save you, I'm going to poke around in your brain and I'm going to make you more docile. I'm going to make you one of my soldiers. If you don't like it, then you can go ahead and die. Choice is yours. And Frankenstein's like, I'm going to die. And Amethyst is like, you sure, man? Like, this is really our last option. We do not have anything else after this. And he's like, nah, I've seen a glimpse of my future. I saw something about Black Canary's face on my chest. I don't know what the hell that was about. But regardless, I'd rather die than do whatever it is he's going to do. And Amethyst is like, all right, as long as you're sure. So then she goes and chops off Victor's head, starts attacking all the other pets, and they're all dead. And Frank is like, okay, look, thank you for doing that. Super cool. 2 favors. 1, burn Victor's body. He definitely needs to die, like, permanently now. And second thing, get me some pen and paper, like a lot of paper. And she's like, oh, you're going to write a poem? And he's like, no, just my memoirs. I just want to write my story. So final thing we get is back up on the Watchtower. Polaris is messing around with the transporter stuff, and all of a sudden alarms start going off, and it's like, wait a minute, that's our deep space probe alarm. And they pull up probe number 7, which just explodes, and it's like, oh god, that's a problem. Switch to probe 4. And it's like, all remote probes are now offline. And Firestorm's like, what does that mean? And Superman's like, something giant is coming and it's gonna be bad. And we see ever so slightly the 3 dots that represent Brainiac. So we're finally at the Brainiac invasion. Oh boy. I can't wait to see how it impacts with everything else going on. Yeah, this is an alright issue. I really don't have a problem that much with it. I think the Superman Constantine stuff is still some of the weaker stuff going on, but if it's going to interact with this Brainiac thing going on, then could be interesting. As for the Polaris, that's fine. As for the 50 Sue, whatever. I've made my peace that just exists. Yeah, overall, I think my favorite bit in this is going to be the Frankenstein bit. I think it's just focused enough that I enjoy what's going on consistently throughout each issue. So hopefully it still maintains a little bit of action, even if we just kind of do a memoir thing for a while here. But overall, this is going to get a 7 from me. I think the Frankenstein's pulling that up above a 6.5. Everything else probably deserves that. Earth 2 World's End number 17, written by Bennett, Johnson, and Wilson, art by a whole bunch of people. So this issue picks up with Helena seemingly killed after being a Fury for a while, and Power Girl has to be held back. She's like, no, I can't let her die, as Batman's holding the body. And Power Girl finally storms forward to Batman, just being like, you're a doctor, she has a heartbeat, save her goddamn life. And Batman's like, I've got venom. It's not going to be pleasant for her, but... And Power Girl's like, I don't care, do it. So he's like, oh man, I should have been a better grandfather. And he injects the venom into Helena. She immediately gasps, sits up, throws something up. It looks black as hell. And Power Girl goes to comfort her, like, I got you, you're okay. And Helena manages to come back and recognizes Kara. And it's like, oh boy, you've been on a bender. No more tequila. And as all this is going on one side of the battlefield, we see that Lady Death has given birth to Death Spawn, which makes sense. It's this brand new creature. It's just like, I am born, and it just starts freaking out to people on the battlefield. Everyone's like, bring it down, light it up, do what you got to do. Green Lantern tries firing a shot. Red Tornado tries firing a shot. It's able to dodge, and it's just kind of like impervious to anything. And it's like, I'm going to the heart of your planet, and it just dives downwards. And it's like, wait, why would it go to the planet's core? It's like inhospitable down there. And Alan's like, it's not. It's going after my power, the power of the Parliament of Earth. So we go back to the Apocalyptian fire pits where Big Bart is chewing out Desaad like, bro, you lost all your Furies, all of the parademons died, and you were laughing when they died? What was that about? And he's like, I like suffering, and parademon suffering also feels good. What are you going to do? And Bart is like, you want me to kill you? And he's like, no. Here's the thing. Death Spawn is there, and that's cool. And she's like, that had nothing to do with you. That's not your credit. You don't get to claim that one. It's like, also, I have a gift for you. I have new allies. I have an entire army of proto-Furies. And he brings out this new, like, half-robot looking parademon thing. And Bart is just like, all right, let me see how they work. And she bashes one with her hammer, and it just gets right back up. And she's like, all right, fair enough, we'll use those. So a whole army of those are going. They're going to go find humanity as they are down inside the tunnel underneath the earth, and just like there, like lambs to the slaughter. Meanwhile, we go to Adam's Haven, which is where the humans are all gathered up, and Sato is talking to, I think it's Sergeant Steele, but I could be wrong with that. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. We've got 2 million people here. Everyone else has just vanished. This is all the people we've got. And it's pretty peaceful. It's crazy that it's actually going so well. And then as if it's on cue, a Muslim man and his wife are being attacked by a bunch of random people for like their bags and stuff like that. Eventually some soldiers step in, break up the fight, being like, we all gotta work together. That's the only way this is gonna work. And as the people who caused the trouble start running away, they notice that their eyes were glowing. And then we see a man in a hoodie who... his eyes are also glowing, so there's some level of mind control going on here. And Sergeant Steele's like, you were saying something about us all working together and things being fine? Like, we are low on supplies. We are not going to be able to last down here forever. And Sato's like, once the superheroes are able to figure out a safe place on the surface, we can get people back up there. That's what we're going on. But right now, we are just humans playing in the sandbox where gods are doing their thing. So, above Amazonia, we see... Jimmy Olsen's like, yep, there's a ship up there. We got to get to it, but we can't boom tube up because that is too loud and too noticeable. And Mr. Miracle's like, what do you got in mind, Jimmy Olsen? And turns out that Mr. Terrific has pirated a rocket. And he's like, yeah, I'm throwing it together, doing what we can. We'll get up there and we'll figure out what we're supposed to do. But how are we supposed to fit all the millions of refugees on board? Like, it's not big enough for that. And Jimmy's like, well, if you don't know an answer, go ask. And so he comes down and talks to Dr. Crane, who says, like, oh, it's easy. Cut out everybody's brains and put them in jars. Then they'll be fine and we can put them back in later. And Miss Terrific's like, I'm pretty sure like 95% of people would rather die than do that. And he's like, oh, all right, fair enough. Well, I heard about something called lensing. Maybe that could work. And Terrific's like, okay, all right, we'll think about that. So Hawkgirl and Flash are working with the old Famine, I think it was, who is no longer part of the Furies. But as they're walking, Hawkgirl's like, are you serious? You're just like gonna help her? She just tried to kill us. And it's like, yeah, but that's not her anymore. Like, she's fine. And I'm gonna be sure to give her help. And Hawkgirl's like, you're a good guy, Jay. But then all of a sudden Famine's like, oh God, my sisters have lost their bond to Apocalypse, and therefore I too have lost mine. I am fading into oblivion. And she just straight up dies. And Hawkgirl's like, well, time to go back to the Haven. And Flash is like, what, we just leave her here? One more pile in the rubble? It's like, yeah, that's pretty much all we can do. But as they are laying her down, all of a sudden they are attacked by the Proto-Furies, who come in and start fighting. We see back at the Geneva, Red Tornado's getting the call from Flash that they're under attack, and the tramway to Adam's Haven is also under threat. So Red Tornado tells Carol, like, hey, you got to leave Helena. We got to go now. And she's like, no, I'm not going to leave. And Helena's like, if you didn't go off and fight, I would never respect you again. Get out of here. So the super people go off as Batman and Helena are left behind. And we see them basically bust their way down to the tramway where all the Proto-Furies are. They're attacking them pretty strongly. We see that Red Tornado gets very protective of Kara, just like, oh, you already took my husband. You will not take my daughter. And just Red Tornadoes them out of the subway. And Kara makes the point of saying, Barda escaped down the tunnel. We should follow her. And then down in the destroyed tunnel, we see that somehow Desaad is already down here. And he's like, oh, the surviving humans are retreating. They are down further. Do you like what we've done today, Barda? And just like, yes, I enjoy it. And then he's like, how about you, son of Darkseid? And through a wall like the Kool-Aid Man comes Calabac saying, oh yeah, we are pleased. And Barda seems shocked that he's there. It's not a great issue. Here's the thing. It's focused. I'll give it that. It's focused very much on, okay, we got Helena back, and then there's this new death spawn. That's taken care of in like the first 2 pages. And everything else is, we've got the people down in the tunnels, and Barda's going to kill them. Good. Great. Nice and focused. It's just boring. It's just like, this should have some level of tension to it, and I don't feel like there's any, because clearly we're all pushing towards, we're going to get them out and up onto this spaceship. Like, it doesn't feel like there is actually a threat here. It just feels like a ticking clock to the point where they are going to get them in the ship. So if we could add a little bit of threatening there, I would appreciate it. I just don't feel it yet. Beyond that, this one's probably going to be like a 6 for me. I was barely focused throughout this issue. It didn't really have that much to it. Obviously, Helena was not going to be killed at the end of last issue. Like, the fact she was brought back by Venom kind of makes it feel all the cheaper in retrospect. So, yeah, I'm giving this one a 6. Not that impressed. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this January 28th, 2015. Unless you count the 3 that I did last week, in which case that also came out. Whatever, you get the point. All right, so this episode is super duper long. I am going to try to speed through this ending as well. In terms of the comics coming out next week, we have 13 of them. They are Detective Comics Grayson, Action Comics Superman, because Jeff Johns cannot keep his schedule, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and the others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Lobo, Swamp Thing, and then our 3 weeklies. You know what they are by now. That's all coming out next week. In terms of you, personally, you listening to this, feel free to leave a comment on this video if you're watching the YouTube version, or if you're listening to the audio version, we have plenty of places you can hit us up. We got a Discord, Patreon, subreddit. All the links to those are in the description. I really, really, really need to wrap this up quickly because I do have an upper limit on time, and I think I'm rubbing up against it. So thank you so much for watching, consuming this podcast, however you do, be sure to tune into next week's episode, and always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.